Chapter 341. When countless reporters and media were still digging for the truth of the disappearance of Lonely Mountain overnight, the cabinet, the Jiangxia provincial government, and the Lin and municipal government had clearly issued a document. In the most official and formal manner, Lonely Mountain was completely removed from the tourist attractions of West Lake. It was no longer a tacit attitude under the guise of renovation. On the edge of the ruins of Lonely Mountain, a sign of a military restricted area was set up. The address of the Southeast Special Warfare Headquarters was in Huading, and Lonely Mountain would become the office of the Southeast Special Warfare Supervision Council. The Supervision Council was a new institution of the Special Warfare System of Zhongzhou State, different from the Special Warfare Headquarters. The emergence of the Special Warfare Headquarters was actually just the expansion of the power of the Special Warfare System. For the whole system, it was not big enough to subvert the fundamental rules. But the Procuratorate was different. It was a new institution, different from the division of labor of the party committee and the government in the political circle, and different from the military generals and political generals in the army. The Supervision Council had a single function. In terms of duties, it was more similar to the Discipline Inspection Department, supervising the performance of their duties by various special warfare agencies. It was supervision. It only had the right to supervise. The emergence of any system or any new institution took a relatively long time to become mature and stable. So strictly speaking, the newly established Procuratorate, which only had the right to supervise but not the right to dispose, was actually in a very awkward position. The special warfare system was different from the military and the political circles. Its duties were secret, its power was hidden, and the rules were loose. So even if it had the right to supervise, the scope of supervision was somewhat vague. The director of the Procuratorate was at the same level as the director of the Special Warfare Headquarters, but he did not participate in the meetings of the decision-making committee, and there was no supervisory bureau under him. In addition to the Southeast, the director of the Special Warfare Headquarters concurrently served as the supervisory director in other regions. All this showed that Zhongzhou State was still in the stage of exploration and observation of this new institution. So Li Honghe's appointment as the director of the Southeast Supervision Council did not bring much power to the Li family. What this position brought to the Li family was more like a reliable protective umbrella. At least when the Supervision Council still existed, neither the Wang family of Beihai nor Kunlun City could join forces to attack the Li family again, because it was equivalent to blatantly trampling on the rules that everyone was abiding by. And with only a dozen people left, the Li family could not use their limited power to do anything against the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City. The situation would roughly stabilize. The so-called balance was like this. The current situation was neither good nor bad for the Li family. There were no unexpected surprises, but it was completely in line with expectations. After more than 20 years of dormancy and forbearance, the Li family reappeared on the stage of Zhongzhou State. This seemed to be an inconspicuous step, but it was the real foundation and starting point. Now it was no longer Li Honghe who stood at the starting point. It was Li Tianlan. Perhaps it was not until today that Li Tianlan really began to shoulder the Li family's burden. Before the Yuzhou Conference, Li Tianlan was the hope of the Li family. After the Yuzhou Conference, Li Honghe completely fell from the invincible realm. Li Tianlan was everything to the Li family. There shouldn't be too many changes in Jiangxia in the next few years. Even the entire Zhongzhou State, if there are no accidents, will be peaceful for a few years. There are good and bad sides to peace. The good side is that it's safe enough, but the bad side is that it's a pool of stagnant water without any waves. Naturally, there will be no chance. It was a sunny morning in late July. The warm sunshine outside the window shone into the bedroom. In front of the mirror, Qin Weibai, who had just gotten up and her hair was still a little messy, was tidying up his suit for him. She said softly, "That's why I want you to go to Tiannan. No matter what happens in Zhongzhou State, Tiannan is destined to become another focus of the dark world. The Li family can only develop tepidly in Jiangxia. If it wants to rise, it can only be possible in Tiannan, which is destined to be in constant turmoil." Li Tianlan answered and loosened the tie around his neck. Today he had a series of extremely important social engagements, so he was dressed very formally. He wore a black suit and leather shoes, looking calm and sharp. After the usual conference, the personnel transfer went quickly. Zhou Yuanshan had already come to Jiangxia from Luojing 3 days ago. On the first day of the new governor of Jiangxia, he came to visit Li Honghe and made an appointment with Li Tianlan to meet today. It was an unusual meeting, because Wu Zhengmin hadn't left yet. Wu Zhengmin hadn't left, so the new governor of Jiangxia, Su Xinghe, naturally couldn't come. Wu Zhengmin hoped to make full use of these few days to create a situation beneficial to the Li family. So today, Li Tianlan would not only meet Zhou Yuanshan but also Wu Zhengmin. To be exact, Wu Zhengmin took Li Tianlan and Zhou Yuanshan to visit various powerful figures in Jiangxia, so that Li Tianlan and Zhou Yuanshan could get their support. Li Tianlan was a little upset. This was the first time he had contacted the high-level political forces of a province. He was not uneasy, but his heart was a little complicated. There won't be any problem, Qin Weibai said softly. Don't underestimate Zhou Yuanshan. As the leader fully supported by the giant group after 20 years, his ability and means are absolutely the best. After Wu Zhengmin left, there would definitely be people in Jiangxia who would change their stance, but there wouldn't be too many of them. Over the years, Wu Zhengmin had been very good at controlling Jiangxia. Most of Wu Zhengmin's forces would support Zhou Yuanshan. At present, Jiangxia was already the home ground of the giant group and the Li family. Although Su Xinghe of the Southeast Group occupied the position of the top leader, the biggest help was only Wang Jingxin. The battle between the two sides was destined to be long, and no one could crush the other side at once. But then again, as long as it was delayed, it would be beneficial to the Li family. The next 2 or 3 years were the rarest opportunities for the Li family. Tianlan, don't worry about Jiangxia for the time being. As long as you open up the situation in Tiannan, Jiangxia will gradually stabilize. If possible, don't have any concerns. The most important thing is to strengthen yourself. You talk a little too much today. Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai and said softly. Qin Weibai froze and suddenly fell silent. Will you go to Huiting with me? Li Tianlan asked. The final maneuver of the 2 academies was about to begin. Today was also the last day he stayed in Linen. After meeting with the important members of Jiangxia, he would return to Huiting and East Emperor Palace, waiting for the start of the final maneuver of the 2 academies. I'm going to leave for a while. Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan's face attentively and said softly. Today? Li Tianlan was stunned for a while, and then asked softly. After several days of tenderness and dependence on each other, Li Tianlan heard the parting without any psychological preparation. Yes. Qin Weibai nodded and murmured. I should have left a few days ago, but I've been reluctant to leave. Now I really can't delay it. I'll see you off. Li Tianlan's mouth moved, and his voice suddenly became a little hoarse. No, you go about your business. Flaming fire is by my side. Nothing will happen. Qin Weibai shook her head. The reason why I told you now is that I don't want you to see me off. I wanted to let someone else tell you before I left, but I was afraid that you would be angry. I'd better tell you myself. Li Tianlan didn't know what to say. He opened his hands and subconsciously held Qin Weibai's warm and soft body in his arms. Qin Weibai gently wrapped her arms around Li Tianlan's waist and said with a chuckle, It's not life and death. Why are you so serious? Wait for me. I'll be back in 2 or 3 months at most. At that time, I'll stay with you and won't go anywhere, okay? Okay. Li Tianlan said sullenly. Qin Weibai left his arms, took off a single Buddha bead from her wrist, handed it to Li Tianlan, and said softly, This is for you. This is? Li Tianlan was a little confused. Great Master Wu Wei gave me the Buddha bead. It doesn't mean anything. It's a mascot. I don't like it very much, so I'll give it to you. Qin Weibai said carelessly, and her tone was very natural. Li Tianlan didn't think much and put it on his wrist. Where are you going? Go back to the headquarters first. Qin Weibai hesitated. The headquarters of Samsara doesn't mean much. It's time to give up. I'll go back again. After that, I'll go directly to Snow Country. Li Tianlan nodded and looked at Qin Weibai in front of him. Qin Weibai stood quietly in the sun, beautiful and dreamy, as if transparent. Today was the day of parting. Li Tianlan suddenly felt a little tired, and seemed to have no energy to do anything. Go ahead. Today is very important to you. Qin Weibai took Li Tianlan's arm and pulled him out of the door. She said seriously, I'll be back soon. Li Tianlan nodded. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Finally he turned and went downstairs. Qin Weibai went downstairs with him and watched Li Tianlan get into an Audi at the door. Qin Weibai looked tranquil and gentle. Li Tianlan looked back at her. Qin Weibai smiled and waved her hand. Everything was so natural, as if it was the most ordinary parting. Li Tianlan got into the car. At that moment, Qin Weibai only saw Li Tianlan's side face. She looked at him affectionately and in a trance. The Audi slowly left the villa area. Qin Weibai stood quietly, motionless, like a sculpture. Such a simple parting. But it was the last glance. The light in Qin Weibai's bright eyes changed. All the emotions that pretended to be natural surged in her heart. As Li Tianlan left, she was close to collapse. She couldn't show her reluctance. She couldn't even show sadness. Because what she wanted to tell Li Tianlan was a very common parting. She knew what it meant. It was a deception, the cruelest deception. Because this seemingly casual parting this time, they would never be able to meet again. Cruel. But it was not the cruelest. She had seen the cruelest scene in Heaven Capital 3 years ago. That scene was not the moment when the woman in white pierced the long sword into Li Tianlan's chest. It was the scene after Li Tianlan fell from the air. That was the real cruelty. The Audi disappeared completely from her sight. All the reluctance, all the unwillingness, and all the deep feelings completely collapsed in an instant. Qin Weibai had already burst into tears. She behaved so normally that she didn't even show a trace of reluctance to Li Tianlan. No reluctance was the real reluctance. She bit her lips hard and murmured softly, I'm sorry. Chapter 342. It was like there would be no reunion and parting. There would be no afterlife in life. That was why Qin Weibai's profile was so clear. It was the last glance before parting. Qin Weibai stood quietly at the door of the villa. Li Tianlan's car had completely disappeared, without a trace. There was a breeze in the sunny linen. The breeze blew the water of the West Lake, and seemed to blow away all the spiritual qi in her. Qin Weibai's whole body became empty. There was no hope, no longing, no thoughts, no coldness and gentleness. She was like a body that had lost everything. She was still beautiful, but she was shaking with the wind. She still had too much to say. There were still too many things she wanted to do. But she couldn't say or do anything about it. She didn't even give Li Tianlan a serious hug or kiss. She behaved too normally. Only normality could make Li Tianlan believe in their future. But there was no future. Even this parting was so incomplete. Tears flowed down her delicate face and dripped on the ground. After all her emotions collapsed out of control. There was no pain in her heart, only numbness and emptiness, with a touch of indescribable coldness. Her body seemed to be weightless, floating with the wind, empty, getting higher and higher. There was no foundation or tie, no past and no future. Qin Weibai squatted down with her arms around her shoulders and lowered her head. She was silent, like a child who had been wronged. But what she suffered was not grievance, but the most heart-wrenching coldness and despair. The wind stopped. The wind rose again. Qin Weibai squatted at the door, as still as a sculpture. Lin Fengting, who spent all his time in Lin, and didn't say a word about the Li family's comeback, walked over quietly and whispered, "When will you go to Snow Country?" "Today." Qin Weibai was silent for a while and whispered. She was in a mess now, but she was unwilling to stand up. To be exact, she was too lazy to stand up. Since she knew there was no future, why did she care so much? "Shall I go with you?" Lin Fengting asked. "No need." Qin Weibai raised her head and looked into the distance. The villa area was very high. Staying at the door, she could clearly see the turbulent and swaying West Lake outside the villa. Her eyes were a little dazed, but her tone was very serious. She whispered, "Sir, please stay in Zhongzhou State for a few more days. It's not too late to set off after the final maneuver." Lin Fengting raised his eyebrows in confusion. "Snow Country has nothing to do with the final maneuver, right?" It has something to do with Tianlan. Qin Weibai choked with sobs and took a deep breath. Her perfect and delicate face was like a pear blossom in the rain. There was a kind of softness in her. I don't want him to go to snow country. After the final maneuver, he probably won't be able to go for a while. She knew very well what resistance Li Tianlan would encounter in the final maneuver. Li Beitian, Su Chu, and Ning Qianqing were all severely injured. Yu Qingyan's realm was still low. Although her lethality was terrifying, it was not suitable for her to play in the final maneuver. Now in the East Emperor Palace, there were only Li Tianlan and Du Hanin, who had barely broken through to the thunder-shocking realm. At most, there was Dongqing Rushi. 3 people. However, the 3 of them would have to face 3 young forces. 3,000 Realms, Phantom Realm, and Jilei Peak. Wang Shengxiao, Guhan's Han Song Xiai, and Jiang Shangyu. Any one of them was powerful enough to look down on the young generation of Zhongzhou state. Qin Weibai had always been very confident in Li Tianlan. She did not think that Li Tianlan would lose, but confidence was not blind worship, so she did not think that Li Tianlan would win easily. If Li Tianlan wanted to win the final maneuver, he almost had to rely on his own strength to defeat the strongest of the young generation. The best outcome was that he would be seriously injured. At that time, he naturally could not go to Snow Country. No matter what happened in Snow Country, he was powerless. Lin Fengting also understood what Qin Weibai meant. He was silent for a while, wanting to say something but stopping on second thought. Finally, he said, "Have you ever thought that you might have underestimated Tianlan?" Underestimated? Qin Weibai turned her head and opened a pair of red and swollen but still bright and dreamy beautiful eyes. "Do you know how strong he is now?" Lin Fengting asked calmly. Qin Weibai was silent. She did not ask about Li Tianlan's current martial arts, and Li Tianlan did not say it. This matter was very important, but it was not the most important thing at the moment. "What do you think, sir?" Qin Weibai asked seriously. Lin Fengting was silent for a moment. He remembered Li Tianlan's performance when he was entangled with Wang Tianzong. In the monstrous sword intent, Li Tianlan directly entered the state of meditation. Lin Fengting could vaguely feel Li Tianlan's progress afterward, but when it happened, he did not feel anything. Nothingness. Li Tianlan in meditation seemed to not exist at all, and his whole person seemed to completely dissipate between heaven and earth. At that time, Tianzong asked Tianlan a question. Lin Fengting said, he asked Tianlan when he recultivated the 4 realms of martial arts. He paused and shook his head in confusion. Li Tianlan did give him a very strange feeling now, but he could not tell it, even though he had seen a few videos of Li Tianlan's moves. Great breakthroughs and great achievements are based on recultivating the 4 realms of martial arts. Tianlan is now in the state after recultivating the 4 realms of martial arts. Don't you know what this means? Lin Fengting asked. Qin Weibai's eyes changed, and her eyes were full of vigor. After recultivating the 4 realms of martial arts, the word recultivation could be completely removed. After the 4 realms of martial arts, there was only the invincible realm. Sir, do you mean that Tianlan is now in the invincible realm? Qin Weibai's eyes were a little happy. The stronger her man was, the happier she would be. Yes and no. Lin Fengting shook his head. He is certainly not in the real invincible realm, but at least he is no longer in the thunder-shocking realm. Qin Weibai fell silent. Even so, it is unlikely that he can win this maneuver unscathed. Qin Weibai whispered. Lin Fengting's eyes were deep and meaningful. Qin Weibai wanted to face the tribulation for Li Tianlan, so she dragged the entire Samsara palace to destruction. But it was related to the future of the Lin clan, so Lin Fengting had to protect her. In this case, some words did not need to be too clear. Lin Fengting smiled and changed the topic. What happened on Mount Dibbing was your doing, wasn't it? He said it vaguely, but Qin Weibai knew what he was talking about. Yes. Qin Weibai's tone was calm. How do you know summer solstice? Lin Fengting was a little curious. Summer solstice's strength was a secret of the Wang family of Beihai, and even some giants of Zhongzhou state were not very clear about it. When the 4 of them learned swordsmanship together, summer solstice's progress could even be said to be the fastest, but she never fought. The treason case on the border more than 20 years ago was the only time she fought. But that case itself had too many secrets and Kunlun City could not publicize it, so few people knew the details of summer solstice. In any case, Qin Weibai should not know. Why don't I know? Qin Weibai asked. Lin Fengting fell silent. He was a little embarrassed. In fact, it did not matter why Qin Weibai knew summer solstice's strength. What mattered was whether the Wang family of Beihai knew that the sneak attack on summer solstice was actually the doing of the Samsara Palace. Lin Fengting did not expect this matter to be a secret, because the Samsara Palace hardly concealed it. Summer solstice could be said to be Wang Tianzong's reverse scale. In her current state, if she forced a fight, it would not be good. Wang Tianzong was not the kind of person who would not fight back after suffering a loss. In the upcoming final battle in the Dark World, the Samsara Palace, which had little hope of survival, provoked Wang Tianzong, and the hope of survival was now almost infinitely close to zero. Tianzong will go crazy. You didn't do this secretly. Lin Fengting shook his head, and his tone was a little complicated. I just gave him a chance to go crazy. Qin Weibai stood up and said in a flat tone. At this point, it's time for the Samsara Palace to give up some less important things. I'm waiting for Wang Tianzong's revenge, and even prepared clues for him. Let's see if the intelligence system of the Wang family of Beihai is really so pervasive. Lin Fengting instinctively did not want to talk about this topic. Are you leaving now? Qin Weibai tidied up her messy long hair, shook her head and said, I still have to see 2 people. Lin Fengting took a deep look at her, nodded and said, take care. He passed by Qin Weibai and walked out. The scenery in Lin'an was charming, especially the West Lake, which was the most memorable. With the establishment of the Supervisory Council, the West Lake scenic spots had recently been guarded by a lot of armed troops. Inevitably, the number of tourists had decreased a lot. The sparsely populated West Lake was a holy land for Lin Fengting, who was unrestrained in his bones. Qin Weibai seemed to have calmed down. She went back to the bedroom and changed her clothes. She was dressed simply in a white shirt and black straight pants. She washed her face in the bathroom. Qin Weibai, who had been empty and desperate and a little weak, suddenly became dreamy and cold again. She called Flaming Fire and asked them to prepare a car, book a plane ticket, and get ready to leave. Saint was still recovering in the small villa at the end of the villa area. Qin Weibai did not intend to see him again. From the very beginning, it was a deal between her and Saint. For her, the meeting in the villa a few days ago should be the last meeting in her life. Saint seemed to be aware of this, so he took off his cloak that day. She went downstairs and walked out of the villa. Before leaving Zhongzhou State, she still had to see 2 people. It didn't matter in which order, as long as she saw them. The lawn in front of the villa was green and soft. Qin Weibai stood on the grass and turned around gently. With her back to the West Lake, she stared at the villa that brought her too much happiness and peace of mind. The location of the villa was excellent, but because of the age, it was actually a little old. However, it seemed to be contaminated with too much of Li Tianlan's aura. So every brick and tile was impeccable. Impeccable. The most perfect. There was a kind of faint but full of joy, anger, sorrow and joy, full of lingering love, full of deep love and no regrets. This atmosphere was neither heaven nor hell. It was the human world in the vast secular world. But it was no longer the human world that belonged to her. Why should she miss it? Qin Weibai pressed her red lips tightly. She looked at the villa in front of her again, and simply turned around. A flash of red appeared in her line of sight. That red dress was like a swaying flame under the sun. The red was passionate, the red was charming, and the red was dazzling. So gorgeous, but so cold. The red dress, with the hem of the dress fluttering in the wind, walked lightly to Qin Weibai. Chapter 343. Qin Weibai looked at Red Dress, who walked up to her. The red dress was bright and eye-catching, making people ignore the breeze, the sun, the lake, and the green trees. The red dress fluttered and became the most vivid color in front of Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai instinctively adjusted her body, took a step back, and made a subtle but clear defensive posture. Her expression was serious. But her eyes, which had just woken up, became dazed again, and there was no focus in them. It seemed to be the same morning. It seemed to be the same sunshine. It seemed to be the same breeze. It seemed to be the same red dress. How familiar this scene was. It was like a sharp knife, piercing directly into her broken heart without any leeway, making her numb and hollow soul experience the deep pain again. The story seemed to have just begun. But Qin Weibai felt that she was standing in the end. She was a little panicked. So she took another step back and looked around in a panic. The villa area was quiet under the sun. The breeze was extremely gentle, and the treetops were swaying in the wind. The sun shone on the west lake, with charming waves. There was no sky close at hand, and it was impossible to see the whole city from above. There was no blood on the ground, and the grass was green and soft, peaceful. Qin Weibai took a few deep breaths and forced herself to calm down. I cried. I'm fine now, she said. Red Dress looked at Qin Weibai quietly. Her eyes were as clear as water, with a kind of innocence that had never been polluted by any filth. She was wearing a bright red tunic dress and a pair of pure white sneakers. Her fair and straight calves were exposed. Her hair fluttered in the breeze. She was pure and enchanting, like a piece of colorful crystal. She was crystal clear and beautiful, yet so gorgeous. Qin Weibai's eyes stayed on her shoes for a long time. Red Dress seemed to take a small step back in a hurry and whispered, I'm not used to wearing high-heeled shoes. That's good. Qin Weibai smiled. Tianlan just left to find your brother-in-law. Did you come to Lin and by yourself? I came with my sister. Dongqing Rushi, dressed in red, said honestly. Lin was not far from Huating. Since Zhou Yuanshan was in charge of the Jiangxia provincial government, it was much more convenient for Dongqing Qiuqi and Zhou Yuanshan to get together. After Zhou Yuanshan got familiar with the environment in a few days, Dongqing Qiuqi naturally came to see her husband. It was just a 2 to 3 hour drive. Dongqing Rushi, who lived with her sister, naturally came to see her fiancé. I'm also your sister. Qin Weibai smiled softly and meaningfully. Her red and swollen eyes were still resplendent, but her expression was extremely gentle. It was a very kind gaze, filled with intimacy, appreciation, and a trace of imperceptible but real guilt. Dongqing Rushi blushed, blinked her eyes, and subconsciously glanced at her wrist. Both of them wore the same exquisite watches on their wrists. She had nothing to do with Qin Weibai, but from Li Tianlan's point of view, Li Tianlan was their man, and they were naturally sisters. Dongqing Rushi gently bit her lower lip, and her bright little face was a little gloomy. No matter how pure her temperament was, she was still a woman, sharing a man with another woman, and she had to call this woman sister. Dongqing Rushi couldn't describe the feeling in her heart, but she just felt a little wronged. Do you feel very wronged? Qin Weibai asked softly. No. Dongqing Rushi shook her head subconsciously, but she was not good at hiding her emotions. She gently pursed her small mouth, and it seemed that she didn't mean what she said. It's normal to feel wronged. Qin Weibai touched Dongqing Rushi's hair, and her voice became softer. She was 1.76 meters tall barefoot, and she was a little taller than Dongqing Rushi. With a pair of high heels, her movement was very natural. Even if I were you, I would also feel wronged. At least for now. It seems that you are indeed more suitable for Tianlan than me. If I were you, maybe I would have already made a scene. Dongqing Rushi lowered her head and looked at her toes. She whispered, I don't dare. If I make a scene, Tianlan will definitely not want me. If Tianlan doesn't want me, my family will not want me either. Her words were very soft and tender. Qin Weibai, who knew something about the past, felt sad in her heart. How could they bear to do that? Qin Weibai smiled and took Dongqing Rushi's hand. You are the most suitable girl for Tianlan, no one else. Tianlan will definitely not abandon you. Really? Dongqing Rushi raised her head and looked at Qin Weibai with clear eyes. She was a little happy. Of course it's true. Qin Weibai nodded. The kindness in her eyes was not hidden, but there was still a trace of pity and sadness. If she didn't exist, who? Dongqing Rushi asked subconsciously. She asked it very naturally, but when she said the single syllable, there was a stiffness that she didn't even notice. The breeze was still soft. Dongqing Rushi, whose hand was held by Qin Weibai, gradually changed. The clarity in her eyes gradually changed, and a strange look became stronger and stronger. Qin Weibai let go of Dongqing Rushi's hand in silence. The kindness in her eyes gradually disappeared, and she became cold. Of course it's another you. I don't think there's anything wrong with my existence. The clarity in Dongqing Rushi's eyes disappeared completely, and she became extremely cold and vigilant almost instantly. Qin Weibai looked indifferently at Dongqing Yueshan, who had quietly replaced Dongqing Rushi's personality. There was a trace of disgust in her eyes that she couldn't hide. It was disgust, not hatred. You should disappear, she said coldly. If you don't show up, the Dongqing clan will be much more at ease. Ridiculous. Dongqing Yueshan sneered. My existence is not a secret in the Dongqing clan. My sister, my parents, my grandfather, and my godfather all know about it. They all love me very much. What qualifications do you have to stand in the Dongqing clan's position to judge me? You are neither human nor ghost. Qin Weibai's voice was as cold as the chilly wind blowing out of the polar glacier, without any temperature. Her smile was as cold as a knife and sharp. You have the face to say that they love you very much? Don't you feel ashamed? Her words were extremely harsh. But Dongqing Yueshan wasn't angry. She just frowned and wondered, why should I feel ashamed? This rhetorical question was natural. Qin Weibai was stunned on the spot. She was silent for a long time, then sighed softly and said self-mockingly, You really have nothing to feel ashamed of now. Dongqing Yueshan became more and more inexplicable. She looked at Qin Weibai, with undisguised defensiveness in her eyes. Just like Qin Weibai didn't like her. She didn't like Qin Weibai either. This woman was recognized as a goddess in the dark world. She was superior, perfect, otherworldly, and extremely beautiful. But when Dongqing Rushi saw her for the first time in Heaven Capital, she didn't like her. She always felt that this woman was too demonic. Under the sacred, always demonic aura. Dongqing Yueshan didn't want to admit that this dislike was fear, but she instinctively didn't want to see Qin Weibai. But what Qin Weibai said to Dongqing Rushi was too obvious. If she didn't show up, she really wasn't sure what Qin Weibai would say. So now it was not so much that Dongqing Yueshan took the initiative to show up, but that Qin Weibai took the initiative to lead her out. What do you want? Dongqing Yueshan asked cautiously. Do you remember our meeting in Heaven Capital? Qin Weibai said calmly. I asked you a question at that time. In the past 100 years in Zhongzhou State, which family is the saddest and most pitiful? Dongqing Yueshan stared at Qin Weibai and said nothing. Qin Weibai did ask this question. But Qin Weibai also gave the answer at that time. She didn't say the Li family, but the Dongqing clan. Dongqing Yueshan didn't agree with this view. Not the Li family. And not the Dongqing clan. She looked at Qin Weibai and said firmly, word by word. I really don't know where your confidence comes from. Qin Weibai sneered and said, if some people are trustworthy, how can we have all this today? From your point of view, if you trust the wrong person, you are doomed to a tragedy. I'm right. Dongqing Yueshan's tone was firm and stubborn. Qin Weibai took a deep look at her. You can believe in your own judgment, provided that you are mentally prepared to pay the price. Dongqing Yueshan's face changed and she said nothing. Tell me, if you fall in love with a man you have to kill, what will happen? Qin Weibai suddenly asked. She asked suddenly. Dongqing Yueshan's face changed dramatically. I don't know what you are talking about. She forced herself to be calm. Qin Weibai looked at Dongqing Yueshan quietly, and a smile gradually appeared at the corner of her mouth. Her eyes were in a trance, and her thoughts completely drifted elsewhere. They are all pitiful people, she said softly, and her sharp eyes softened. Have you ever imagined yourself as a bird? A bird with wings that can fly freely, flying higher than an eagle. Qin Weibai asked softly. Dongqing Yueshan only thought that she was crazy. She shook her head and said, No. I have imagined it, but I can't. Qin Weibai said softly. But there is a woman who has always thought so. She used to be a genius of an era, but in the end, she cooperated with others and killed her beloved man. Do you want to know what happened to her in the end? What happened? Dongqing Yueshan asked subconsciously. She was crazy. Qin Weibai laughed and said, She was really crazy. Back then, she thought that she was a bird that could fly freely in front of me. So she laughed and jumped from the highest place in Huating. She fell to pieces and her family fell into dire straits because of that. The important members of her family were either sentenced to death or sent to prison. None of them had a good ending. Qin Weibai said softly, as if she remembered that summer again. That summer in Huating, that woman was also wearing a scarlet dress and a pair of red high heels. In the bright and illusory sunshine, she smiled foolishly and imagined that she had become a bird, opened the wings she thought she had, and jumped from the highest place in Huating. She was a crazy red dress. She was a bird with broken wings. Her figure passed through the white clouds and fell from the sky with the fierce wind, and finally dyed a large area of green grass red. After the sunshine in Huating that day, there was a heavy rain. The heavy rain passed through the quiet years in the depths of memory, gradually turning red and sticky, like the last messy loneliness of a bloody storm. All the grudges and grievances had their final ending in that rain of blood. Qin Weibai smiled, looked at the expressionless Dongqing Yueshan in front of her and said softly, "Coincidentally, that completely crazy woman has a name similar to yours." Chapter 344. Li Honghe was making tea. The two villas under Qin Weibai's name were next to each other. Through the white railing, Qin Weibai clearly saw the old man making tea in the courtyard of another villa. The wind was gentle and the sun was shining. The old man's movements were unhurried and leisurely. Seeing Qin Weibai coming over, Li Honghe looked up with a smile and said, "Sit down. You're in a good mood." Qin Weibai sat down and said in a flat tone. She didn't call Senior Li, who seemed to be very respectful. In the absence of others, Qin Weibai didn't bother to disguise her emotions. "I'm old. I told you last time we met that I have nothing to think about in this life. My only obsession is to see Tianlan bring the Li family back to its original height." Li Honghe smiled and poured a cup of tea for Qin Weibai. Westlake Longjing was world famous, but the old man made black tea from Jiangnan. The tea was mellow and had a long aftertaste. He put the tea in front of Qin Weibai, narrowed his eyes and continued, "But now it seems that you still don't believe me." "Should I believe you?" Qin Weibai asked. This was not the first time they met. More than 4 years ago, when Li Tianlan re-practiced martial arts for the first time in the desert prison, Qin Weibai and Li Honghe met for the first time. Qin Weibai had never concealed her doubts about Li Honghe, but she got all of Li Honghe's trust. "Whether you believe it or not, I mean it." Li Honghe looked at Qin Weibai calmly. Qin Weibai looked down at the cup of black tea handed over by the old man. She gently touched the edge of the cup with her fingers. After a long time, she suddenly asked, "Is there enough manpower in the Li family?" "The Overwatch Council has enough manpower," Li Honghe said calmly. "It's not a powerful agency in the southeast. It doesn't make sense to put too many people here." Qin Weibai looked up at Li Honghe as if she wanted to see through his heart. On the surface, the Southeast Supervisory Council was indeed meaningless. Most of the Southeast was the territory of the Wang family of Beihai. A few areas like Huating were also a mix of crooks and honest people. Those who dared to establish themselves there all had quite a strong background. The power and function of the special warfare system were originally very vague. The Supervisory Council had the function of supervision. But at present, unless an institution blatantly committed treason, the Supervisory Council had no business at all. But it was an organization that could be at the same level as the Special Warfare Department. Li Honghe's position was more meaningful to provide the Li family with a place to survive. The Li family, which had only a dozen people left, was all stuffed into the Overwatch Council. At least, it was equal to having a veritable official identity. It was also equal to Zhongzhou State's recognition of the Li family's status again after many years of treason. With this identity, no matter how much the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City hated the Li family, they could only hold it in. If they took the risk to take action, once clues were exposed and used by people with ulterior motives, it might form another case of treason, and the evidence would be more conclusive than the case of treason many years ago. Therefore, in a short time, in the absence of absolute certainty and entanglement of great interests, the Li family would be extremely safe in Lin and with the brand of the Overwatch Council. But it was only limited to safety. It was also very difficult to expand. And this was under the situation that the Li family got the survival soil after Sai City gave up a murderous weapon in 2 provinces in the northeast. Wu Jingmin was transferred from Jiangxia. But all this was only on the surface. No matter how down and out the Li family was, Li Honghe was still there. Although Wu Jingmin was transferred, he went further into the decision-making committee and became the lowest-ranking deputy prime minister in the cabinet. Zhang Qi, the minister of special warfare in the southeast, also hid very well. This was only known by Qin Weibai. God knew how many cards Li Honghe had hidden in his hands. This unfathomable old man, guarding in the southeast, held an agency that seemed to have no real power, but had too many chess pieces that could be used in the dark. He said he had no thoughts. Who dared to believe it? At least Qin Weibai did not dare to believe it. Everything in the future depends on Tianlan. Li Honghe whispered, "The road has been paved. Although this starting point is not perfect, it is much better than expected. At least, as long as I am alive, you will not have any worries." But the situation is not good. Qin Weibai's tone was indifferent. In all fairness, today's Li family was already good. At least it had become Li Tianlan's help. Jiangxia, which was likely to become the foundation of the Li family in the future, and Zhongzhou State's deputy prime minister, who was old but strong, was not weak. In any group, it would be an important or even a core component. But the key was that the Li family was not in any group, and the Li family's opponent was not an individual, but a group. It was a behemoth like the Southeast Group and the Special Warfare Group. In comparison, the help around Li Tianlan suddenly seemed extremely loose. One was the declining Li family, and the other was Sai City, which had just risen for a few decades but lost its murderous weapon. As for the giant group, Li Tianlan didn't get the support of the giant group, so much as the support of the 3 pillars of rich and powerful families. Dongqing City, the Bai family, and the Zhou family. The combined forces were indeed powerful, but it was still a different concept from the support of the giant group. "It's really not good." Li Honghe nodded. "So if you have extra men, you don't have to monitor me. It's better to put them in more useful places." Qin Weibai's slender and delicate fingers gently tapped on the edge of the cup. The sound of fingernails gently touching the teacup was extremely empty, calm, but unusually distant. Qin Weibai's voice sounded in the tapping. "How much can you grasp about the purgatory of Heaven Capital?" The Li family had been away from the dark world for many years. But this problem could still become the most sensitive one in the dark world. Li Honghe, grasping the purgatory of Heaven Capital. Li Honghe did not seem surprised by this question. He was silent for a while, and then said indifferently, "Which aspect do you mean?" There were only 2 main reasons why the purgatory of Heaven Capital could become the top superpower in the dark world in just 3 years, and its momentum surpassed that of the Samsara Palace. First, it was a decisive expert who could almost override the entire dark world. It was deity who had fought with Wang Tianzong more than once without suffering much loss. Second, it was the pillar experts and elite troops of the purgatory of Heaven Capital. Sunluo, life-prolonging, immortality. When the 3 palaces of the purgatory of Heaven Capital were famous in the dark world, people found that the experts of the purgatory of Heaven Capital were far more than Daybreak, Dawn, and Phoenix. There were also a large number of silent experts and real battle-hardened elites. Top experts, steady pillars, and battle-hardened elites formed the most stable structure of the purgatory of Heaven Capital. They had no shortcomings because they were backed by East Island, so they could become a real superpower in the shortest time. "All aspects," Qin Weibai said indifferently. This time, Li Honghe was silent for a longer time, and then he said slowly, "I don't know." Qin Weibai could hear that it was the truth. But because it was the truth, she felt a little sharp and angry. "You don't know?" She raised her eyebrows. "Don't worry." Li Honghe smiled. "Everyone has witnessed Tianlan's performance over the years. The Li family all approves of him. But not everyone approves of him." Qin Weibai's tone was cold. "It's enough that most people approve of him." Li Honghe's tone was indifferent. "As long as he's strong enough, he can get everything. I've prepared everything that needs to be prepared. You've prepared what I'm not prepared for." He looked at Qin Weibai with undisguised appreciation in his eyes. I didn't expect that the silence of the master of Samsara Palace would have such a big impact in the final battle of Heaven Capital 3 years ago. After the border war, Tiannan appeared, and the purgatory of Heaven Capital entered Tiannan. Is it your doing? Is this our tacit understanding? I'm just doing what I should do. Qin Weibai's voice was indifferent. Tianlan will become stronger, the strongest. I've never doubted that. But he needs time to grow, Li Honghe said in a low voice. His tone was very heavy, because everyone knew what Li Tianlan would be like when he grew up. He knew. The Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City would also know. The Li family just wanted a soil for survival, and it directly shook the situation in the northeast and southeast of Zhongzhou State. Even with the support of the giant group, it still paid a high price. This was just a soil for survival. So what kind of price did the Li family have to pay to make Li Tianlan grow up? I'll give him time, Qin Weibai said softly. But after he gets time, what else will he get? The sound of fingers tapping on the edge of the cup was still ringing, calm and collected. The subtle sound seemed to synchronize with the breeze, becoming softer and more soothing. A butterfly flew over the marble coffee table. The butterfly's wings fluttered and finally landed beside the teapot. He can get everything as long as he has time. Li Honghe took a deep breath and said in a low voice, Everything. Qin Weibai laughed. I can't believe you, she said, and even if he gets it, there are two kinds. One is temporary possession, and the other is real possession. Tianlan can get everything, but your existence may take everything away. I have a hunch that you may live longer than everyone thinks. Wang Tianzong slashed you with his sword and made you fall into the invincible realm. It may be for a reason. Senior Li, you just said that most people in the Li family will recognize Tianlan. Her voice paused. The butterfly in front of the table flew up, but it danced in the sight of the two. Qin Weibai's voice was ethereal, vaguely seeming to synchronize with heaven and earth. It sounded with the vibration of the butterfly's wings, occupying all of people's consciousness. So do you recognize Tianlan? The butterfly danced softly. The wind seemed to be getting stronger. The sky was rising, and the temperature was rising. The sunlight gradually faded, and the air became dark. The coffee table in front of the two remained unchanged, but the grass around them began to wriggle wildly. The grass was rising wildly and completely out of control. Wildflowers appeared in the grass and bloomed rapidly. One by one, the trees grew bigger and taller in the grass at a speed visible to the naked eye. The air became sultry and thick. The villa disappeared. A dense primitive forest suddenly appeared around the two of them. The sunlight disappeared completely. In the darkness, the table and chairs in front of the two seemed to disappear, and the marble table turned into a stone tablet. Two bright red characters were carved on the stone tablet. Zhongzhou State. The butterfly was dancing. The wind was getting stronger. The thick and sultry air was flowing in the wind. The sultry air gradually became cool, and then it turned into bitter cold. It began to snow high up in the sky. The snow covered the treetops and fell to the ground. Of course I recognized Tianlan. Li Honghe's voice became a little slow, but it was still clear. Really? Qin Weibai's voice was like the sound of nature, filling every corner of the forest, grand and clear, like the voice of a fairy. Yes. Li Honghe's voice became more and more slow. He didn't seem to think there was anything wrong with the forest that shouldn't have appeared. It was still snowing in the sky. The snow was getting heavier and heavier, and the snow kept rising, burying the boundary monument of Zhongzhou State for a moment. Countless trees gathered together, rising and rising again. The landscape was undergoing earth-shaking changes. The snowflakes were getting bigger and bigger. Qin Weibai also didn't think there was anything wrong with the snow that shouldn't have appeared. Her voice still rang through the whole world unhurriedly. If Li Guangta didn't die between him and Tianlan, what would you choose? Li Honghe's voice sounded a little dull, but it was extremely true and frank. I don't know. What about you? He suddenly countered with a question. The snowflakes all over the sky fell down like crazy. Countless trees were still rising, still gathering. The forest had disappeared. So the rising and gathering trees turned into mountains. The mountain was covered with snow, covering the entire mountain and plains. Of course I choose Tianlan. Qin Weibai's voice was gentle and sentimental, almost like a whisper. Really? Li Honghe's dull voice gradually became smooth. Why are you so good to him? Or, he looked at Qin Weibai. Who the hell are you? I am, boom. Qin Weibai seemed to have said the answer, but Li Honghe couldn't hear it clearly. The whole world completely collapsed in an instant. The falling snow, the collapsed snow-capped mountains, and the messy sky completely disappeared in an instant. Li Honghe gave a muffled groan. The world returned to its original state. There was still a tea table in front of them. It was still windy and sunny, and the fragrance of tea was spreading. The butterfly was still there. But it became two. One stopped in front of Qin Weibai. The other fell on Li Honghe's hand. Li Honghe looked at Qin Weibai. His eyes were a little strange. The expression on Qin Weibai's perfect face changed, and she stared at the butterfly in Li Honghe's hand. You want to hypnotize me? Qin Weibai's voice was extremely cold. You want to hypnotize me? Li Honghe said softly. Qin Weibai was silent. In the spiritual field, both of them were masters. She understood what was going on in an instant. At the beginning, the primeval forest and the boundary marker of Zhongzhou state were all normal. Because that was the world deep in Li Honghe's heart. It was the border. But there shouldn't be snow at the border. The moment the snow appeared was the beginning of Li Honghe's counterattack. The vast snow and the snow-capped mountains were Qin Weibai's inner world. The only world. Qin Weibai recognized Li Honghe's inner world. That was the real border of Zhongzhou state. Li Honghe also recognized Qin Weibai's inner world. That was the real Kunlun of Zhongzhou state. The snow and the mountain could almost be regarded as the hub of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou state. That was the Qingyan Snow Peak of Kunlun. Under the Qingyan Snow Peak, it was Kunlun city of Zhongzhou state. The two worlds changed so naturally that Qin Weibai, who wanted to hypnotize Li Honghe, didn't notice it. Instead of getting the truth she wanted, she almost fell into Li Honghe's trap. The confrontation in the spiritual field was even more thrilling than the fight between martial arts, because it was almost an interrogation of the soul. Li Honghe fell from the invincible realm, and his willpower was unstable. Qin Weibai was also in a trance in the face of the parting that would never be together again. Qin Weibai took a deep breath and calmed down again. She might have said something just now, but she believed that Li Honghe couldn't hear it. I didn't expect you to have such a strong sense of self-protection. Li Honghe smiled and said, similarly, I didn't expect you to know this method of hypnosis. He looked at Qin Weibai and said, the field of hypnosis is broad and profound. Different techniques have different effects. This technique is improved by me, and it can even be said to be my own creation. Li Honghe touched the butterfly on his hand and said, I can be sure that there is only one person who knows this technique except me, but that person is not you. His smile was a little complicated and confused. So can you tell me who taught you this technique? Qin Weibai glanced at Li Honghe coldly and said nothing. Hey, sister Grandpa Li, are you drinking tea here? It's windy. A voice suddenly sounded. Lin Yuxian appeared in front of the two with a bright smile. What are you talking about? Nothing. Li Honghe smiled and said, watching the butterfly. He raised his hand. The butterfly flew up and flew past Lin Yuxian's eyes. What butterfly? Where is it? Lin Yuxian looked confused. Let's go. Qin Weibai suddenly stood up. She took a deep look at Li Honghe and said calmly, I don't know if I should believe you or not. My distrust of you all comes from that cemetery. I know what you have done. Lin Yuxian was there, so what she said was not completely clear. Li Honghe condensed the death energy formed by nearly 1,000 dead people of the Li family into a huge destiny, which almost doomed Li Tianlan's destiny of death. How could Qin Weibai believe Li Honghe? A light flashed in Li Honghe's eyes, and he smiled bitterly. I understand. But I have no choice. If I had a choice, I wouldn't do that. He sighed softly, looked at Qin Weibai, and said softly but sincerely, I also know what you and Wu Wei have done. Thank you. I'm leaving. Qin Weibai shook her head. Li Honghe stood up behind her and bowed deeply to the young woman, who was nominally his granddaughter-in-law. "Thank you." Lin Yuxian was startled. Qin Weibai did not look back. Li Honghe looked at her back with a calm expression. He knew what Qin Weibai had done, so he naturally knew what kind of consequences she had to bear. This woman, who had only a vast expanse of snow in her heart, was going to face the tribulation for Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan thought that it was just a farewell. But Li Honghe knew it clearly. There would be no future for her to leave this time. No matter what happened in the future, her perfect figure would no longer be seen in the final sky of Li Tianlan and the Li family. Qin Weibai gently turned around and walked out of the villa. The brilliance of the whole early summer seemed to wither like winter as she turned around. Chapter 345. It was Zhou Yuanshan who asked Li Tianlan to meet, but the meeting place was the first building of the Jiangxia Council compound. This was Wu Jingmin's residence. Wu Jingmin's entry into the cabinet was a foregone conclusion. The Ministry of Organizing Work of Zhongzhou State had issued a document a few days ago, and the whole of Jiangxia was shaken violently. Recently, the council compound of Jiangxia was extremely lively. Various departments at the provincial level and the prefecture level leaders below them came in an endless stream. Wu Jingmin had been running Jiangxia for more than 20 years, and he had been the top leader for nearly 20 years. His deep foundation was completely revealed when he was about to leave office. Every car going in and out of the council compound was enough to show the old man's almost superb control of Jiangxia. The southeast of Zhongzhou State was very lively this year. The most lively place was Jiangxia. Lively but not chaotic. Wu Jingmin's departure from Jiangxia would naturally have a huge impact, but his departure was not unacceptable. He entered the decision-making committee and was the real deputy prime minister of Zhongzhou State, not a nominal title. In the cabinet, he was in charge of business, finance, market economy, quality inspection, customs, tourism, and other work of Zhongzhou State. Although he ranked last, the real power in his hands was not fake. This was undoubtedly the result of the secret support of the giant group and Li Honghe. At the same time, it was announced to the whole of Jiangxia that Wu Jingmin did not lose power after leaving Jiangxia. Such a move would not completely stabilize people's hearts, but at least it would not make the whole officialdom of Jiangxia panic. This was the first step to stabilize Jiangxia, and it was a crucial step. Only when Wu Jingmin was still in power could all the subsequent actions of the Li family be meaningful. It was just after 9 o'clock in the morning when Li Tianlan arrived at the council compound on Fu Road, Linnan Province. Wu Jingmin's secretary stood at the door to greet him. The secretary had the same surname as Li Tianlan, and his first name was Tong. He was ordinary, introverted and reserved. He reached out to stop Li Tianlan's car, opened the door of the passenger seat, and sat down. He said with a smile, "Your Highness, I'm Li Tong. The secretary and the governor are walking in the yard, and they asked me to pick you up." Li Tianlan nodded with a smile, his eyes peaceful. As the secretary of the top leader of Jiangxia, Li Tong's information was naturally among them. However, compared with the 13 directors of Jiangxia, Li Tong's information was a lot more vague. The Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City joined hands to attack Li Honghe. After that, a series of rapid and hasty changes occurred. No one else was prepared, not even the Li family itself. It was completely unrealistic for Li Tianlan to integrate into the high-level circle of Jiangxia in just a few days. Today, he bit the bullet and came here, which seemed to be pushing a duck to the perch. Under the circumstances that he had not even met Wu Jingmin, it was naturally difficult for him to understand what kind of person Li Tong was. The black Audi slowly drove to the gate of the councillor's compound. At the same time, an Audi with a Yong City license plate slowly drove out. The two cars brushed past each other. Li Tianlan glanced at it. It was the number 1 bus from Yong City. It's Secretary Ji's car. Li Tong reminded softly. He looked out the window at the departing Audi with undisguised envy in his eyes. Secretary Ji Kong of Yong City. Li Tianlan said with a smile. In the information he studied, the deputy secretary of Jiangxia, Ji Kong of Yong City, could be said to be the most important, so he could understand the envy in Li Tong's eyes. Because Ji Kong could be regarded as Li Tong's predecessor and the first secretary of Wu Jingmin, He could be said to be the most trusted confidant. Wu Zhengmin strongly recommended Jiang Kong to the high-level leaders to be the top leader of Yong City. At the same time, in order to check and balance Wang Jingxin of Linan, he pushed him to the position of deputy secretary. In today's Jiangxia, Jiang Kong seemed to be a vassal, but in fact, he was the real third leader of the whole Jiangxia. The information given by Qin Weibai and Li Honghe clearly pointed out that when Wu Zhengmin left Jiangxia, as long as Jiang Kong was kept, Zhou Yuanshan was almost invincible in the competition with Wang Jingxin. Li Tianlan drove thoughtfully. The car passed by the first building of the director's compound and came to the chessboard mountain in the director's compound. The trees on the chessboard mountain were green, but they did not give people a sense of lush vitality. Instead, they looked a little desolate in the green. There was a chessboard temple on the chessboard. Li Tianlan drove west along the mountain road and finally saw two men standing side by side in front of an old mountain wall. Wu Zhengmin, whose hair was a little gray and had not had time to dye it black, was saying something. Zhou Yuanshan, the new governor who came to Jiangxia from Zhongyuan, stood in front of Wu Zhengmin, high-spirited and in high spirits. The mountain wall behind them was engraved with a whole volume of Amitabha Sutra, and the handwriting was ancient and clear. Li Tianlan looked at this picture quietly. Even though he was a very slow guy in all aspects, when he looked at the two men in his sight at this time, he could clearly feel the extremely heavy and solemn atmosphere full of power. He took a deep breath, opened the door, got out of the car and walked over. Zhou Yuanshan saw Li Tianlan and waved his hand with a smile. This was the second time they met. But different from the approachable brother-in-law in the director's compound of Huading for the first time, Zhou Yuanshan now was steady and strong, and his every move was dignified. The only thing that remained unchanged was that his eyes were still kind when looking at Li Tianlan. He shook hands with Li Tianlan, and then introduced with a chuckle, "Tianlan, this is Secretary Wu." Li Tianlan did not reach out to Wu Zhengmin. He came to him, bent down very seriously, and bowed to call him Grandpa Wu. Wu Zhengmin was an old friend of Li Honghe. In any case, he deserved to be called Grandpa Wu. This was the talent that Li Honghe valued the most in those days, and his performance did not let anyone down. In the more than 20 years after the collapse of the Li family, facing the covetous eyes of the Wang family of Beihai and the open and covert attacks of other groups, he always stayed in Jiangxia and guarded the last and most important foundation for the Li family. Not only did he stand firm, but he was even able to promote his first secretary to the position of the third leader. Every storm in Jiangxia over the past 20 years could fully show Wu Zhengmin's unfathomable political wisdom. If the Li family was still in its peak state, with Wu Zhengmin's ability, how could he stay in Jiangxia? It was even possible for him to become the cabinet. Wisdom means courage and loyalty. Wu Zhengmin could hardly find any flaws. This was a real strong man. He waited for the current situation with more than 20 years of silence and persistence, and finally won everyone's respect. Such silence was even more powerful than the desperate roars of too many people. "Why are you so polite?" Wu Zhengmin smiled and helped Li Tianlan. His eyes were a little emotional. Looking at Li Tianlan's young face, he whispered, "Today's situation is not easy, and it will depend on you in the future." "Don't worry, Grandpa Wu." Li Tianlan's voice was very light, but there was no guilt in it, only firmness. In this situation, Jiangxia can only be temporarily handed over to Yuanshan. Wu Zhengmin sighed and said, "Today I called you here for no other reason. I just want to express an attitude to the outside world. Even if I leave Jiangxia, the Li family has a successor, and there is a good enough team for the giant group to build their next generation with you as the core. Only in this way can these people in Jiangxia continue to maintain confidence and hope. If you have nothing to do in the afternoon, you and Yuanshan can accompany me for a walk. I guess I have to see a lot of people." "Okay." Li Tianlan nodded, as calm as water. "Kong has just been here. He has made it clear that he will support Yuanshan's work. If I leave Jiangxia, as long as Kong is still there won't be a big problem within 3 years. Tianlan, time is very tight. The next 3 years are very important for you, for me, for Yuanshan, and for the entire Li family. And all of this depends on your performance in the next 3 years." Wu Zhengmin looked at Li Tianlan with gentle eyes. Are you confident? Li Tianlan nodded in silence. He understood what Wu Jingmin meant. 3 years later, there would be a major change of government in Zhongzhou state once in a decade. At that time, if there was no accident, Wu Jingmin would definitely retire. After all, he was too old. Once Wu Jingmin retired, the situation in Jiangxia would be unpredictable. At that time, whether Governor Zhou Yuanshan of Jiangxia could take the position or not would be the key. If Zhou Yuanshan could not stay in Jiangxia, the Li family was bound to be in turmoil again. Even if Zhou Yuanshan could get a position not inferior to that in Jiangxia, the Wang family of Beihai that regained control of Jiangxia would not let the Li family have a good life. If Zhou Yuanshan was forced to leave, it would even affect the layout of the giant group. This was a real move in one hair, and the whole body would be affected. It was difficult for the Li family to make any real big moves in Jiangxia within 3 years. Therefore, everything was on Li Tianlan. 3 years later, it was the time to really test the Li family's survival. What Li Tianlan could do could even directly determine the final result of the Li family. And what he had to do was not only to ensure that his martial arts advanced by leaps and bounds, but also to make his power expand rapidly. At least, he had to ensure that Zhou Yuanshan could take the position in Jiangxia. This was the bottom line and the biggest goal. Don't worry, Grandpa Wu. Li Tianlan took a deep breath. His tone was not excited. Next, everything depends on me. Wu Zhengmin nodded and said meaningfully, when a pawn crosses the river, there is no way back. It can only move forward. Everyone is a pawn. Zhou Yuanshan whispered. The general trend was like a chessboard. Every time there was a turbulence on the chessboard, there were dense black and white interlacing, just like Go. But when it came to the Li family, the general trend of the Li family was also a chessboard. But because they had too few pawns, each pawn must have a more distinct role. It was like chess. Wu Jingmin crossed the river from Jiangxia to Yuzhou. Zhou Yuanshan crossed the river from Zhongyuan to Jiangxia. Li Tianlan also crossed the river from Jiangxia. They were all pawns crossing the river. There was no retreat. On the chessboard mountain, in front of the chessboard temple, the 3 of them stood quietly, like 3 pawns on the chessboard who crossed the river first. Chapter 346. In the afternoon and night, Wu Jingmin took Li Tianlan to meet a lot of people. Jiangxia was very big, but in the past many years, the power structure was extremely simple, especially in the years when the Li family was destroyed. No matter how Wu Jingmin insisted, at least in the overall situation, he was the backbone of the Southeast group. After the end of the Yuzhou conference, Wu Jingmin, who had entered the cabinet, officially left the Southeast group and became Li Honghe's subordinate again. Naturally, he was unwilling to let go of the team he had cultivated in Jiangxia for many years. He must do his best to leave these team members to the Li family. Wu Jingmin was upright and had sharp eyes. In more than 20 years, the team he had built in Jiangxia was absolutely full of talents. In his own words, few people would care about an old guy like him who was too old to be active for a long time. But these people who had been promoted by him over the years were the real wealth. Because of this, today's meeting happened. Wu Jingmin, who was deeply rooted in Jiangxia, Zhou Yuanshan, who was the first among the young generation of the giant group to reach a high position, and Li Tianlan, the heir of the Li family. The 3 of them stood together. The relationship between them was subtle and meaningful. The powerful figures of Jiangxia, who saw the 3 of them, also had mixed feelings. Most of the day had passed. Li Tianlan didn't know how many people he had met, but he clearly remembered their attitudes. Among the 13 directors of Jiangxia, except for Zhou Yuanshan himself, Wang Jingxin, and Su Xinghe, who had not yet arrived in Jiangxia, 6 directors clearly expressed their support for Zhou Yuanshan, and 2 expressed a certain degree of support. In addition, the attitude of the main people in charge of the cities under Jiangxia was also relatively optimistic. It might take time to test the specific situation, but at least for now, no one clearly opposed Zhou Yuanshan taking over the team left by Wu Jingmin. Today's trip was already worthwhile for him to get this result. When Wu Jingmin left and Su Xinghe took office, the real struggle between the dragon and the tiger had just begun. Li Tianlan had dinner in the number 2 building of the director's compound, and then drove back to the villa area by West Lake. The lights were still on in Qin Weibai's two villas, but Flaming Fire and Qin Weibai had left. In the afternoon, when Wu Zhengmin took him to visit a senior deputy governor of Jiangxia, Qin Weibai sent him a text message. It was a simple message with only 3 words. "I'm leaving." Li Tianlan didn't reply at that time. At this time, he took out his mobile phone and glanced at it again. He suddenly felt a burst of melancholy. Li Honghe was drinking tea in the living room. Lin Fengting, who had been elusive in recent days, sat in front of Li Honghe and talked about some interesting things inside the Lin clan with a smile. Li Tianlan's heart was empty, with some disappointment that he himself was not aware of. "You're back." Li Honghe glanced at him with gentle eyes. "How are you today?" "It's all right." Li Tianlan sat on the sofa and poured himself a cup of tea. After Elder Wu leaves, the situation in Jiangxia will not change much. It is unlikely to get better, but it will not get worse either. It will be a fierce battle. The real winner will be outside of Jiangxia in 3 years. Lin Fengting smiled and pointed out the current situation with one prick. He didn't care about the affairs of the world, but it didn't mean that he was a fool. Since he had decided to help the Li family, he must pay attention to the current situation of Zhongzhou State. Lin Fengting could see the current situation clearly. In the general election 3 years later, how strong the Li family can be will directly determine the situation in Jiangxia. At present, it is the bottom line to let Zhou Yuanshan take advantage of the situation and serve as the top leader of Jiangxia in 3 years. If he can't achieve this goal, the Li family will be in danger. If he is forced to leave Jiangxia, after Wu Zhengmin retires, all the forces he has cultivated over the years will undoubtedly fall to the Wang family of Beihai. At that time, the Li family will have nothing, and Zhou Yuanshan, who has bet on his political future, will completely lose the qualification to compete with Wang Jingxin. The giant group will also rebound because of Zhou Yuanshan's failure. The 3 pillars of the wealthy will be forced by the internal pressure of the group, and their support for the Li family will be greatly reduced. At that time, Lin Fengting didn't go on, but glanced at Li Honghe intentionally or unintentionally. Li Honghe drank tea with a calm expression. 3 years later, there would be a general election. Wu Zhengmin would retire, and Li Honghe's health might not be able to support it. If Zhou Yuanshan was defeated in Maiqing, the Li family would really be at the end of its road at that time. On the contrary, if Zhou Yuanshan took advantage of the situation and absorbed the team left by Wu Zhengmin, no matter how bad the Li family was, with Jiangxia as the foundation, it would at least have a chance to breathe. The giant group would definitely support Zhou Yuanshan, and the Southeast group would definitely oppose it. It was not difficult to guess the position of Kunlun City. The loose giant group might not be able to withstand the cooperation of the Southeast group and the Special Warfare group at that time. As for the academics, there were more important goals 3 years later, so it was bound to not give them too much support. Therefore, how far Li Tianlan could develop in these 3 years, and how much support he could give Zhou Yuanshan became the key. I've met Yuanshan. With him and Zhengmin, Jiangxia is not a big problem. At present, this matter is temporarily over. When will you leave? Li Honghe looked at Li Tianlan and asked. Now Li Tianlan said. The storm in Lin had settled down, and there would not be too many ups and downs in 2 or 3 years. It was meaningless for him to stay here. Okay. Li Honghe nodded, glanced at the door of the villa out of the corner of his eye, and showed a smile. A light figure walked into the hall, wearing a red dress. She looked as charming as fire, but her temperament was as clear as water. She blinked at Li Tianlan and said in a clear voice, "You're back." Dongqing Rushi. Li Tianlan was a little stunned and nodded subconsciously. Why are you here? I came with my sister, Dongqing Rushi said softly. Dongqing Rushi said softly. She sat down beside Li Tianlan obediently and reached out to hold one of his hands. Li Honghe looked at this scene with warm eyes and a hearty smile. Fengting, don't you think these 2 children are a good match? When the final maneuver is over, I'll go to Zhongyuan in person to set their wedding date as soon as possible. Li Tianlan frowned. Li Honghe didn't seem to notice this. He looked at Dongqing Rushi with a smile and said, Girl, what do you think of your engagement with Tianlan? No. Dongqing Rushi shook her head and glanced at Li Tianlan. I'll listen to Tianlan. Li Honghe laughed and didn't hide his joy. There's no hurry about the wedding date. Let's talk about it in a few years. Li Tianlan said in a calm tone. No matter how busy you are, can you be so busy that you don't even have time to get married? There was a sharp flash in Li Honghe's eyes, and he was a little unhappy. Let's wait and see. Li Tianlan's tone was brief, suppressing the emotions in his heart. Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan in a daze. After a long time, she silently lowered her head, but did not let go of Li Tianlan's hand. Go pack up first, and we'll go to Huiting later. Li Tianlan took a deep breath and squeezed Dongqing Rushi's slightly cold palm. Dongqing Rushi nodded, stood up, and went out. Packing up was an excuse in itself. Neither she nor Li Tianlan had anything to pack. Dongqing Rushi walked out of the villa and sat at the marble table in the yard, holding her cheeks in her hands, in a daze. In the villa, Li Honghe looked at Li Tianlan with a gloomy face. Li Tianlan drank his tea calmly. The engagement was set many years ago. It's not negotiable. After a long time, Li Honghe seemed to calm down and said word by word. I don't disagree. Li Tianlan said calmly. I'm just waiting. Waiting for what? Li Honghe's tone was a little cold. Waiting for me to die. Li Tianlan frowned and seemed to be a little annoyed. He lit a cigarette and took a big drag. Because of Qin Weibai? Li Honghe eased his tone and asked. Yes. Li Tianlan spoke bluntly. Do you know her? Or do you know who she is? Li Honghe asked in a deep voice. I don't deny that she has helped you a lot at this stage, but can you be sure that her help is a good thing for you in the end? Li Tianlan raised his head. His eyes were bright and sharp, like the bright sword light after it was unsheathed. You don't believe her? Li Tianlan asked. I do. Li Honghe said calmly. But I can't find the basis for trust. You, me, the Wang family of Beihai, and the whole dark world, no one knows Samsara Palace, and no one knows Qin Weibai. When Qin Weibai first appeared in Huiting, the six investigated her through their own intelligence channels. They only knew that she came from a small mountain village in the southwest. But after all these years, the six tried their best. They couldn't even find any clue about her parents, not to mention that small mountain village. There was no clue at all. Do you understand? She looked at her grandson's raised eyebrows and sighed softly. I can trust Qin Weibai, but I'd rather cooperate with the Dongqing clan. After all, they know everything. And when it comes to Zhongzhou State, not to mention that Samsara Palace is not in Zhongzhou State. Even if they are here, they can't help you as much as the Dongqing clan. Marrying Rushi is the best for you and the Li family. Not the best for me. Li Tianlan looked at Li Honghe with burning eyes. I really don't know her past, but I believe in her feelings for me. For me, this is the basis of all trust. Feelings. Li Honghe sneered. Do you know where these feelings come from? Li Tianlan had been stunned and couldn't say a word. What's Qin Weibai's identity? What's your identity? Now you do have feelings, but where did they come from? Is this kind of inexplicable feelings the basis of trust? Why is she so good to you? Do you understand? Li Honghe asked. He took a deep look at his grandson, whose face was changing, and said calmly, behind the inexplicable deep feelings, there must be a debt. This kind of debt may be in the past, or it may be in the future. She may know that she is destined to owe you something in the future, so she makes it up to you now. I believe in such feelings. But I don't. As he spoke, the muscles at the corner of his mouth twitched, and a touch of pain and anger flashed in his eyes. Lin Fengting's mouth also twitched. I'm going to Huiting. Li Tianlan stood up and walked out of the living room without looking back. Obviously, he didn't intend to say anything more on this issue. Li Honghe stood up abruptly, as if he wanted Li Tianlan to stop. Lin Fengting waved his hand with a bitter smile, interrupted Li Honghe's anger, and let Li Tianlan leave. Senior Li, I know what you are worried about. Lin Fengting said helplessly, but what you are worried about is unlikely. Qin Weibai does owe Tianlan, but now she is making up for it, not harming him. Not now. Li Honghe sat down. But in the final battle of Snow Country, if she doesn't die for Tianlan, what will happen in the future? Lin Fengting's eyes were complicated. He really knew what Li Honghe was worried about. But he also knew Qin Weibai. He really knew her. When in Australia, he agreed to lend the sword to Qin Weibai on the condition that he met the master of Samsara Palace. What everyone didn't know was that he did meet the master of Samsara Palace in Lin, and a few days ago. After meeting the master of Samsara Palace, he knew the origin of Samsara Palace, Qin Weibai, her debt, and the cause and effect that Lin Su said that day. Seniorly, after the final battle of Snow Country, Samsara Palace is destined to be destroyed. Lin Fengting said softly. But Samsara Palace and Qin Weibai are two different things. I can't see through her fate. Li Honghe said in a deep voice. She has the appearance of chaos. If she doesn't die in the future. Chapter 347. When he left Lin, and in addition to Dongqing Rushi, who went back with him, Li Tianlan also had a very famous driver. Lin Fengting stayed in Linen, but he sent his son Lin Yuxian to Huading. Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi sat in the back row. Lin Yuxian drove the car with a smile on his face, carefree and in a good mood. Did Yuxian go to Huading to see the final maneuver? Li Tianlan took out a cigarette and handed it over, asking casually. In the end, he didn't let the heir of the Lin clan call him brother-in-law, and Lin Yuxian didn't let Li Tianlan call him brother Lin. They called each other by name. Although they were not very familiar with each other, now they were on the same side, so their relationship was relatively harmonious. Yes. Lin Yuxian took the cigarette and subconsciously glanced at Dongqing Rushi in the rearview mirror, only to find that the genius of the Dongqing clan didn't feel disgusted. Instead, she took out a lighter to help Li Tianlan light the cigarette. He smiled and said, the final maneuver of the two academies of Zhongzhou State is quite important every time. And this one is even more so. With Yu Shengshao, Gu Hanshan and Jiang Shangyu. This maneuver can be said to be the most valuable one. If I don't watch such a big show, I will regret it for the rest of my life. Not only me, but the people of the superpowers in the dark world will certainly collect relevant information, even if they don't come. Now the Sky Academy is the focus of attention. Li Tianlan suddenly remembered the chat with Qin Weibai a few days ago. It was a chat about the Chosen One. Qin Weibai said that in this era, if someone could face Lin Fengting, deity, and the master of Samsara Palace with murderous weapons and not hurt his foundation, he would be the chosen one of this era. But this era was about to pass. Next was the era of young people. Wang Shengshao, Gu Hanshan, and Jiang Shangyu would all be the top combat forces of Zhongzhou State in the future. If his foundation was not hurt in the face of their siege, would he really deserve the title of the chosen one of Zhongzhou State? Li Tianlan didn't consider whether he could do it or not. He was already considering what risks and benefits it would bring to him. In the final maneuver, if he really defeated everyone in this way, then no one would doubt his potential and future. But the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun cities' desire to kill him would be so strong that it couldn't be any stronger. Li Tianlan was very clear about this. He was thinking about how many people would protect him at all costs. As long as he survived, the enormous prestige he had obtained after becoming the #1 expert of the younger generation would become tangible benefits. His future development in the Southern Heaven region would also be smooth. The final maneuver, Li Tianlan murmured to himself. After the Yuzhou conference, the final maneuver would undoubtedly become a watershed for the Li family. In the long run, it was even more crucial than the Yuzhou conference. The Yuzhou conference demonstrated the Li family's past foundation, while the final maneuver meant the Li family's future potential. The time interval between the two events was so short. Li Honghe and Li Tianlan seemed to really connect the past and the future. Tianlan, are you really going to Tiannan to develop after the final maneuver? Lin Yuxian casually turned off the music in the car and asked with a smile. Li Tianlan came to his senses and nodded. There is a chance there. I don't want to miss it. Do you mind if I go to Tiannan with you to have a look? Lin Yuxian chuckled and took a deep drag on his cigarette. He was leisurely and carefree, and his hands were about to leave the steering wheel. Li Tianlan froze for a moment. Then he was shocked and sat up straight subconsciously. Are you going to Tiannan too? He asked. Why? Are you looking down on me? Lin Yuxian said with a smile. I'm not afraid of any of the few young heavenly sons in Zhongzhou state at present. Well, I shouldn't be a match for Sheng Xiao. What I lack is not sword intent, but realm. I may suffer a little in physical strength, but the difference won't be too big. If I go to Tiannan, I won't be a burden and can still help. I believe you. Li Tianlan looked at Lin Yuxian strangely. Lin Yuxian's current realm was only half a step away from the peak of the thunder-shocking realm. There was no doubt about his talent and inheritance. But he couldn't figure out why Lin Yuxian went to Tiannan. Does Uncle Lin know that you're going to Tiannan? Li Tianlan asked straightforwardly. Yes. Lin Yuxian nodded. He doesn't support or oppose it. Everything depends on my choice. The Lin clan never enters the secular world. Li Tianlan said slowly. Lin Yuxian disapproved of this rule. It's true that we don't enter the secular world. But it's only the people of the Lin clan's headquarters who don't enter the secular world. To be honest, if you hadn't appeared, I might have been in Zhongzhou state now. Zhuanyuantai in Zhongzhou state belongs to the Li family and the Lin clan. If the Li family can't bear the foundation of our ancestors, the Lin clan won't let it go. The original plan was for me to come to Zhongzhou state to set up a branch of the Lin clan. Now that you've appeared, I'm much more relaxed. I've always wanted to say thank you. Now I should go to Tiannan to help you with a little. And maybe I'll find the dark world wonderful in the future, and directly set up a branch of the Lin clan in your territory. The future of our age is too changeable. Who can tell? Can I choose this? Li Tianlan found it incredible. Lin Yuxian was the heir of this generation of the Lin clan, and he was the only heir. If he left the headquarters, who would inherit the Lin clan in the future? I couldn't choose before, but now I can choose. Lin Yuxian paused and said calmly, in the next 20 years of the Lin clan, my father has found a helmsman who is better than me, him, and everyone else. I won't hide it from you. It's the sister I just recognized. The dark world is very chaotic now, but this 3-year war will come to an end sooner or later. If there is no accident, this storm will end in Snow Country. At present, the Samsara Palace is in a very bad situation. In the past 3 years, it can be said that the Samsara Palace has single-handedly provoked the scuffle in the dark world. Now all the superpowers have almost reacted, but they can't get off. They can only bite the bullet and fight on. But at the last moment, the Samsara Palace, which has attracted too much hatred, will not have a good end. Its destruction is expected. If the Samsara Palace disappears, my father plans to let my sister take care of the Lin clan for the next 20 years. He looked at Li Tianlan and said meaningfully, not the headquarters of the Lin clan. It's the whole Lin clan. Li Tianlan looked stunned. The whole Lin clan. Even with his current knowledge, he didn't know what it meant. The headquarters of the Lin clan, plus the branches scattered around the world, might be a behemoth that could compete with the Wang family of Beihai. At the very least, it was not much weaker than the general superpowers. In terms of foundation, it was much stronger than the current Samsara Palace. Lin Fengting let Qin Weibai take care of the Lin clan for the next 20 years? Until now, thinking of the first time they met in Lin and a few days ago, Lin Yuxian called Qin Weibai's sister. Li Tianlan was pondering over the endless aftertaste. Why? Li Tianlan couldn't help asking. This question was simple and complicated, containing too many things. Among these things, the word trust was particularly sensitive. Why did Lin Fengting trust Qin Weibai so much? Because my sister doesn't care about these things. Lin Yuxian whispered. This is what my father told me. She doesn't care about power and interests. For the dark world, my sister really has no desire. Otherwise, the Samsara Palace must be different today. As long as her requirements are met in the things she cares about most, she is the most trustworthy person. What she cared about most. Li Tianlan thought of Lin Yuxian going to Tiannan with him. He seemed to understand something, but he still couldn't help asking. What does she care about most? Your stability. Lin Yuxian's eyes were a little envious. You are what she cares about most. As long as you can be stable, she won't care about anything else. That was why he followed Li Tianlan to Tiannan. In the case that the Samsara Palace was doomed to be destroyed, The loose and united Lin clan might not be able to give Li Tianlan much help, but at least it could provide Li Tianlan with a way out. Li Tianlan thought of what Li Honghe had just said. Behind the inexplicable deep affection, there must be a debt. If there was really a debt, what kind of debt could make her compensate so affectionately and persistently? Li Tianlan shook his head hard and threw away the cigarette butt in his hand. He didn't speak for a long time. Lin Yuxian smiled, turned on the music in the car again, and drove in silence. There was one thing he didn't say. He now had a choice not to inherit the Lin clan. If he followed Li Tianlan to Tiannan, and eventually established a branch of the Lin clan in Zhongzhou State, such a result was the best for Li Tianlan, Qin Weibai, the Li family, the Wang family of Beihai, the Lin clan, and even the Dongqing clan. Lin Yuxian even knew what Li Honghe was worried about. It was said that in the most glorious period of the Li family, there was a beautiful woman who was also very good to Li Guangtu. However, if Qin Weibai went to the Lin clan, there would be no samsara palace in the world, and naturally, there would be no old samsara. Dongqing Rushi, who had been quietly lying in Li Tianlan's arms, moved her body, rubbed Li Tianlan's eyebrows and whispered, "Are you unhappy?" "No." Li Tianlan smiled. "What about you? You haven't spoken since you got in the car. Are you unhappy?" He told Li Honghe to postpone the wedding in front of Dongqing Rushi. Dongqing Rushi had a reason to be unhappy. "No." Dongqing Rushi looked into his eyes. "I have something on my mind." Lin Yuxian, who was driving, twitched the corner of his mouth and almost couldn't help laughing. The so-called worry was naturally something that couldn't be said. The daughter of the Dongqing clan was generous, which was too cute. Li Tianlan almost couldn't help it. He touched Dongqing Rushi's hair and chuckled. "What's on your mind?" Dongqing Rushi was a little hesitant. She turned to look at the night sky outside the car window. Under the night sky, the bright moonlight shone on the highway without street lights, and it was cold. She looked at the cold moon hanging high in the sky and was lost in thought. "I seem to have heard a name." Dongqing Rushi's eyebrows furrowed in distress. Her eyes were still pure, but at this time, there was a trace of indescribable calmness and clarity, instead of blankness. Chapter 348. When he returned to Huading, it was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. The turbulent mid-July had completely passed. July 21st. There were still 10 days before the final maneuver. Li Tianlan did not return to the Sky Academy, but went directly to the East Emperor Palace on the outskirts of the city. It was windy late at night in Huading, and it seemed that rain was coming. The Glass Palace, which could be said to be quite colorful in the whole of Huading, was silent and cold in the night. The security guard at the gate of the East Emperor Palace opened the door, and the Audi slowly drove into the East Emperor Palace. Looking at the huge palace in front of him, which was mostly made of glass, Lin Yuxian was amazed. The palace was exquisite and magnificent, and the artificial lake around it was clear and charming. In the dark of the night, the light from the glass and the lake reflected off each other. It was as if the lake had risen directly into the sky, or as if the palace had been built in the water. It was ethereal and ethereal, without the slightest bit of vulgarity. "What a good place," Lin Yuxian said with a smile. "Is this your lair?" "Sort of." Li Tianlan nodded and smiled. "It's just the beginning. It looks gorgeous on the outside, but there's nothing inside." "Nothing?" Lin Yuxian smiled strangely. He was indeed a person who was easy to get along with. He was so casual that he seemed to have no pursuit. Although it was not a long journey from Lin and to Huating, Li Tianlan had already established some good feelings for him. He was such a brother-in-law, with great strength, but was too lazy to steal any limelight. His motto was to enjoy others' happiness, so Li Tianlan could not help but appreciate him. Li Tianlan responded casually, but he saw Lin Yuxian glancing at Dongqing Rushi with a gloating face. He glanced at Dongqing Rushi with a baffled look. Dongqing Rushi stood beside Li Tianlan, raised her head, and looked at the glass palace in front of her. Following her gaze, he vaguely saw a slim figure standing behind an open window on the top floor of the glass palace. The moment Li Tianlan saw her, the open window was closed, and then the whole palace was lit up. The light shone from the inside out and fell on the artificial lake in front of them. The sparkling lake and the bright palace were like a dream. "Brother-in-law who is inside," Lin Yuxian said with a smile. The way he called him brother-in-law was really teasing. Li Tianlong coughed as if he was answering Lin Yuxian's question, but his eyes fell on Dongqing Rushi. "It's Yuetong," he said simply. Wang Yuetong had been staying in Huiting. In the first 2 days, she lived in the hotel, and then she moved directly to the East Emperor Palace. The little princess, who had just turned from a girl to a woman, was very clingy. No matter what Li Tianlong was doing before, she would call him every once in a while. However, since Li Tianlong went to Lin, and Wang Yuetong had not called him or even sent him a text message. But the fact that she was still here spoke volumes. Li Tianlong's eyes were warm. "I know her." Dongqing Rushi nodded and said softly. Li Tianlong thought she would continue to say something, but after the 4 words Dongqing Rushi, there was no more. How could such an attitude be ambiguous? She had no attitude at all. Li Tianlong felt a headache and subconsciously began to imagine the scene of Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong meeting later. The door of the summer palace opened. Wang Yuetong stood at the door, bathed in the crystal light. She wore a moon-white nightgown, looking a little lazy and charming. Dongqing Rushi quietly put her little hand in Li Tianlong's. Li Tianlong felt a little helpless. He took Dongqing Rushi's hand and said softly, "Let's go in." "I'll just walk around." Lin Yuxian laughed and whispered, "Although I like crowds, I'm not interested in the scene of domestic violence. This place is good. I'll just walk around. Don't worry about me." Li Tianlong cursed in a low voice, "F***ck your domestic violence," and took Dongqing Rushi to the door. Wang Yuetong stood quietly in front of the door. Her big eyes were full of complicated emotions. She was a little uneasy and a little panicked. Dongqing Rushi looked calmly at the carvings on the marble pillars at the entrance of the summer palace without saying a word. "Why didn't you call me these days?" Li Tianlong whispered. "I thought you went back to Yuzhou." Wang Yuetong shook her head subconsciously and whispered, "If I go back to Yuzhou, will I never see you again?" "How come?" Li Tianlong shook his head and reached out to touch Wang Yuetong's hair. His voice was warm. "Do you know what happened in Linen?" Wang Yuetong bit her lip and said nothing. She was the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, but she couldn't represent anyone. She couldn't even say sorry to Li Tianlong. This obviously uneasy, but unable to say anything was the most embarrassing and heavy position. Li Tianlong sighed and held Wang Yuetong in his arms. He was still holding Dongqing Rushi's hand. Or it could be said that he was held by Dongqing Rushi, while his other hand was holding Wang Yuetong. The posture was a little weird. Wang Yuetong was silent. Dongqing Rushi was still studying the carvings on the pillars beside her. "Tianlong, don't you blame me?" Wang Yuetong held Li Tianlong tightly and asked nervously. At that time, she knew what happened in Lin, and almost immediately, her original sweet and happy little thoughts were also covered with a layer of shadow. In the past few days, Wang Yuetong could be said to have lived like a year. Now that she was in Li Tianlong's arms, she suddenly felt relaxed. "Why should I blame you?" Li Tianlong asked with a smile. Wang Yuetong wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. The invincible realm expert who seriously injured Senior Li with one sword in Lin, and was her biological father. More than 20 years after the Li family was destroyed, the Wang family of Beihai showed its position to the remaining Li family for the first time. The two families used to be very close, but now the contradiction was so sharp and obvious. What happened in Lin and Wang Yuetong hesitated. "What happened in Lin and has nothing to do with you," Li Tianlong said calmly. "That's the choice of the entire Wang family of Beihai. Yuetong, I don't blame you, because you can't decide anything. But it doesn't mean that I don't have any thoughts about the Wang family of Beihai. Between you and me, no one is sorry to anyone, let alone right or wrong. But since we have different positions, and what happened in Lin and happened, I must write it down. To be honest, I don't hate the Wang family of Beihai or your father. But since he chose to attack the Li family, my counterattack in the future will certainly not be peaceful." He paused, looked at Wang Yuetong and continued. "As for you, I thought you would go back to Yuzhou without saying a word. If you really go back to Yuzhou, I won't blame you. If you are still here, I won't blame you. You, a woman, can still persist in the situation that the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family are against each other. Why should I, a man, give up? It's not that I don't have this responsibility. Otherwise, you are really blind. Really? Wang Yuetong raised her head in Li Tianlan's arms, with tears in her eyes. It could be seen how much pressure and suffering she had suffered in the past few days. Of course it's true. You are my woman. If you don't let go, I certainly won't let go. Li Tianlan pinched Wang Yuetong's little nose dotingly, very gently. Dongqing Rushi squeezed Li Tianlan's hand hard, very heavily. Li Tianlan felt a pain in his palm, and then he remembered that he had ignored the daughter of the Dongqing family. Let me introduce. Li Tianlan bit the bullet and said, "This is Dongqing Rushi, and this is Wang Yuetong. Even if you haven't met before, you should have heard of each other." Silence. There was an awkward silence that made people's scalps numb. Wang Yuetong lay in Li Tianlan's arms. Dongqing Rushi held Li Tianlan's hand. The two seemed not to hear Li Tianlan's words, and they didn't even bother to do the most basic courtesy. Li Tianlan subconsciously thought of Qin Weibai. If she was here, Li Tianlan thought about it, and he really wasn't sure what kind of scene it would be if Qin Weibai was here. He suddenly looked forward to that scene. Li Tianlan stood for a while. Seeing that the two didn't want to talk, he sighed softly, and was about to speak. Dongqing Rushi moved her palm. Wang Yuetong stood up from Li Tianlan's arms and said softly, "I'll prepare the bath water for you. Stay with me tonight. I have something to tell you." A charming blush appeared on her face and she whispered, "I'm ready." The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth twitched, and he took a deep breath. Before he spoke, Wang Yuetong continued, "There is a document in the study from the Sky Academy. You can take a look at it when you have time." She turned directly to the bathroom. Dongqing Rushi was still quietly looking at the flowers and plants engraved on the marble pillar. From beginning to end, Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong seemed to ignore each other, and never looked at each other. Was this considered jealousy? Wang Yuetong's figure disappeared. Dongqing Rushi finally turned her head and looked at Li Tianlan. The light in the hall shone on the door. Her eyes were pure and penetrating. "Will you accompany me tonight?" Dongqing Rushi looked at Li Tianlan with burning eyes. She squeezed Li Tianlan's hand, turned her head and whispered, "If you accompany me, I can do what I did for you at my sister's house again." Her voice was low, and her face was flushed. Dongqing Rushi, Wang Yuetong. One on the left and the other on the right. Both sides were temptations. Li Tianlan almost collapsed. He forced himself to calm down and said helplessly, "I won't go anywhere tonight. I'll meditate in the study." There were 10 days before the final maneuver. At this time he really should seriously adjust his state. Dongqing Rushi said faintly, "Oh." Li Tianlan took her to the top floor, and arranged a bedroom for Dongqing Rushi next to his bedroom. The 3 bedrooms were next to each other. Li Tianlan was in the middle, and Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong were on the left and right. Lin Yoxian's bedroom was arranged next to Yu Donglai's. The old man had been living here. At this time he seemed to be meditating, so Li Tianlan did not disturb him. After doing all this, Li Tianlan went to the study downstairs. The document from the Sky Academy that Wang Yuetong said was placed in the center of the desk. It was said to be a document, but in fact, it was just a letter. Li Tianlan opened the envelope and read it with no expression on his face. He had read this letter a few days ago, but it was not for him, but for Dongqing Rushi. In addition to the relatively formal letter, all the students who were qualified to receive this letter also received a phone call from the teachers of the 2 academies. Li Tianlan's phone call was from Zhuang Huayang, the principal of the Sky Academy. Today was July 21st. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon on July 23rd, Gu Xingyun, the governor of Kunlun City, would come to Huading accompanied by Gu Qianchuan, the first elder, to talk with the top 50 people on the total credit list of the 2 academies. At that time, all the contents, order, and rules of the maneuver would be fully announced. Li Tianlan threw the letter on the table. He sat in the chair and closed his eyes. He did not meditate. He was sleeping. Now was the only way for him to reach his peak state as soon as possible. Chapter 349. The secular world was like a sea of bitterness. But there were always a few lucky people. Even in the secular world where all living things were bitter, they were still the darling of fate. For Wang Yuetong, her life should not have the so-called sorrow and pressure. As the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai and a genius with wind vein, she might not be as dazzling as her brother Wang Shengxiao's wind and thunder veins, heavenly king heart and exquisite bone. But a wind vein was worth cultivating in any superpower. However, no one in the Wang family of Beihai had ever strictly supervised and sharpened her martial arts. Whether it was Wang Tianzong or Summer Solstice, they had never made any clear requirements for her from childhood to adulthood. Happiness had been running through her childhood and girlhood, sweet as a dream. This was a life where she didn't need to worry about anything or struggle for any fantasy. She also practiced martial arts, but she never paid attention to it. 3 years ago, she was at the peak of the ice-condensing realm, and now she still hadn't entered the fire-flaming realm. Wang Yuetong also had some contact with the operation of commercial investment capital. Her sister-in-law, who was internally determined to be the future hostess of the Wang family of Beihai since she was born, was a real genius in this regard. When some famous economists, professors, business tycoons, and financial tycoons taught that sister-in-law, she listened in a lot. The Wang family of Beihai was unrivaled in the field of biological gene technology. There were all kinds of gene potions for different purposes. Wang Yuetong also studied them, and used some extremely precious raw materials to make a batch of invaluable facial masks. In addition, Wang Yuetong also learned a little bit of bel canto, ballet, piano, guitar, guzheng, painting, and calligraphy. She could be said to be a real all-rounder, knowing everything but proficient in none. From childhood to adulthood, she did whatever she wanted to do, and no one forced her to do it if she didn't want to do it. Because her life was destined not to have too many ups and downs. Her future was stable, happy and free. It was noble and elegant, calm and luxurious, dinner and champagne, sweet and leisurely. Her life would not have ups and downs and difficult setbacks, so it was good to be casual. Because of this, the entanglement between Wang Yuetong and Li Tianlan was regarded by the whole Wang family of Beihai as Wang Yuetong's self-abandonment. Abandoning oneself to degeneration. Wang Yuetong did not deny this statement, but she had never regretted it. She always felt that a woman's life was only complete when she met a man who made her have the courage to fly into the fire like a moth. He had fallen and fallen. Even if he really became an inseparable and chaotic relationship in the future, and became a karmic obstacle entangled with gratitude and grudges, there was nothing to regret. At least Wang Yuetong didn't regret it. It was rainy on July 22nd in Huiding. The rain continued to fall from dawn to dusk. The rain continued to fall without any signs of stopping. Wang Yuetong silently walked out of the study and gently closed the door. In the study, Li Tianlan sat in a chair, still sleeping quietly. Li Tianlan had slept for nearly 48 hours since he came back from Linen, but there was still no sign of him waking up. His breathing was steady and regular, as if he had fallen into the deepest sleep. Wang Yuetong hesitated several times and finally did not wake him up. This was the 5th time she had entered the study. Li Tianlan did not wake up, so she could only continue to wait. Waiting. From the moment she made up her mind to be with Li Tianlan, she knew that this was something she had to get used to in the future. The TV was on in the hall on the 1st floor. Wang Yuetong held the railing and looked down. On the wide sofa, Dongqing Rushi's body was curled up, looking lonely. Wang Yuetong frowned, and looked a little hesitant. Li Tianlan had been back for 2 days. Dongqing Rushi naturally lived here. Neither of them woke Li Tianlan up, nor did they say a word to each other. Wang Yuetong stayed in her room most of the time. Dongqing Rushi was really free. She meditated, cooked, ran in the morning, and watched TV. Nothing was delayed. It seemed that they could not stand the atmosphere here. Yu Donglai and Lin Yuxian were rarely at home. One went out to visit friends, and the other went out to play. They left for nearly 2 days and did not come back until noon. At this time, no one knew where they were. Wang Yuetong hesitated whether to talk to Dongqing Rushi or not. She didn't even know what to talk about. She just felt that it was very wrong. Dongqing Rushi might be able to deal with such an awkward atmosphere calmly, but she couldn't. Otherwise, she would not have locked herself in the room for 2 days in a row with an attitude close to concession. Wang Yuetong narrowed her eyes and quietly looked at Dongqing Rushi on the sofa downstairs. Dongqing Rushi on the sofa seemed to feel the hostile eyes, so she raised her head. One was up and the other was down, 6 floors high, but they were still clear in each other's eyes. Wang Yuetong took a deep breath, turned to the elevator, and planned to go downstairs. The phone suddenly rang. Wang Yuetong looked at the caller ID, and her face suddenly changed. The phone was still ringing. On the screen, the word daddy seemed to have suddenly become extremely sharp, easily piercing through all her defenses. Wang Yuetong's hand holding the phone trembled a little. She pressed the answer button and gently said hello. Yuetong, where are you? On the phone, Wang Tianzong's voice was clear and calm, without any extra emotion. In Huading, Wang Yuetong bit her lip and whispered. During the 3 years when Li Tianlan left, the relationship between her and Wang Tianzong was extremely stiff. They didn't even talk on the phone a few times a year. Wang Tianzong had a headache about his daughter's degeneration, while Wang Yuetong continued to insist in silence. If Li Tianlan didn't appear, the relationship between father and daughter would always be stiff. East Emperor Palace? Wang Tianzong asked. Wang Yuetong's face was a little pale, but she didn't say a word. On the phone, Wang Tianzong seemed to sigh softly. Don't you go back to Yuzhou? Your uncle Yi called me several times and said that you asked for 10 days leave, but you haven't gone back yet. Dad, I want to resign. Wang Yuetong held the phone and said very carefully but firmly. Resign? Wang Tianzong thought for a while and said blandly. If you resign, what can you do? Wang Yuetong fell silent again. She knew what she was doing, but she didn't know how to say it. She believed that her father on the other end of the phone could understand what she meant. Wang Tianzong was also silent. On both ends of the phone, between father and daughter, all the emotions seemed to be completely frozen for a moment. Go home. After a long time, Wang Tianzong said blandly, I won't go back. Wang Yuetong suddenly laughed. Her voice was very clear, with the lightness and cleverness that Wang Tianzong was familiar with, but there was a trace of persistence in it. Dad, I want to stay in East Emperor Palace and stay with him. He's an enemy. Wang Tianzong's tone was simple and straightforward. But he's not my enemy. For me, he's my man. Wang Yuetong said softly. Have you really made up your mind? Wang Tianzong said calmly. Do you really want to go all the way? This is not a decision. Wang Yuetong said softly. I just respect my own feelings. Dad, I'm not angry with you by saying this. I can be sure that I really love him. Maybe in your eyes, I haven't been with him for a long time. But since love at first sight can happen, it's not difficult to understand that I love him. I believe that he's a man worthy of all my feelings. It doesn't matter who he is to the Wang family of Beihai, an enemy, a friend, or a stranger. Dad, I'm just a little girl spoiled by you. I haven't done anything for the family, and I haven't thought about anything for the family. It's the same now. Whether he's an enemy or a friend of the family, I love him. I can't turn back, and I don't want to turn back. Even if you put aside your standpoint, he may not be suitable for you. Wang Tianzong said calmly. You can hand over your whole life, but Li Tianlan's life is destined to be more than love. Do you remember my evaluation of Li Tianlan when I first met him? Wang Yuetong's eyes were a little dazed. She remembered the meeting between Li Tianlan and her father in Huating. At that time, she actually didn't know her father's evaluation of Li Tianlan. Wang Shengxiao conveyed the evaluation to her afterward. Only 8 words. A wolf's ambition was never a good match. I probably know something about the Li family's situation over the years, so I can guess Li Tianlan's psychology. Apart from potential, he had nothing else. That was why he wanted so much. Power, wealth, status, women, he wants everything. What kind of woman is Qin Weibai? It's no exaggeration to say that if I were 10 years younger, even I would be tempted. Of course, I would just be tempted, and I wouldn't really do anything. No matter who gets such a woman, he should be satisfied. But Li Tianlan is not satisfied. He still wants Dongqing Rushi. I can be sure that he will have more than 3 or 5 women in the future. You may have a place in his heart, but you will never be the most important. You will always be just one of his many women. You love him, but does he love you? He may have real feelings for 1 or 2 women, but with Qin Weibai, you don't have a big chance. Let's make a bet. You take the phone to Li Tianlan now. As long as I hear Li Tianlan say sincerely that he loves my daughter, I will not oppose your relationship in the future. How about that? Wang Tianzong was surprisingly talkative. In recent years, Zhongzhou Sword Emperor had become more and more reticent. It could be seen that he was really worried about Wang Yuetong. Wang Yuetong bit her lip and felt a little wronged, but she did not agree to bet with her father. She held the phone tightly and forced herself to calm down. Dad, I've decided. I'm sorry. Wang Tianzong suddenly fell silent. After a long time, when Wang Yuetong was about to hang up the phone, 3 words came from the phone. Go home. Wang Tianzong said and hung up the phone directly. Wang Yuetong burst into tears in an instant. Go home. Wang Tianzong said these 3 words twice. But the meaning was completely different. Wang Yuetong wiped her tears, and her eyes became firm again. She turned into the elevator and went downstairs. In the hall on the first floor, Dongqing Rushi was still sitting on the sofa, watching Tom and Jerry, which was very childish for adults. She held the remote control in her hand and smiled quietly. Yu Donglai and Lin Yu were sitting in a remote corner of the hall, playing chess. The moment Wang Yuetong came out, both of them focused on her at the same time. Wang Yuetong's eyes were slightly red, but she looked very calm. She didn't know until the moment Wang Tianzong hung up the phone. Just as she had just braced herself to answer her father's call. There were some things, no matter how reluctant she was, she had to face them. She took a deep breath, walked directly to Dongqing Rushi, reached out her hand, and said blandly, "Give it to me." Chapter 350. The war between women could never be as brutal as the men's fists, but the forms that were displayed were more colorful. There were verbal battles on different occasions, open and covert attacks from every corner, sarcasm and ridicule without batting an eyelid. 2 extremely beautiful young women from extraordinary family backgrounds. Even if they were to pull each other's hair or ears, it would still be a rare sight to see. This was King Lively. Otherwise, why would the ratings of some palace dramas in recent years far exceed those of war dramas? Those rising ratings were not all contributed by sisters, aunts and aunts. No, young men also loved it. Lin Yuxian was such a man. He liked lively scenes. At present, the battle between Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong seemed to have just begun, but it was enough to make him excited. He sat in the corner of the hall with Yu Donglai, and was too lazy to play chess for a while. He looked around and found that there were no snacks around, so he casually lit a cigarette and looked at Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong who were confronting each other. He gloated and muttered to himself, "No, no, no." Yu Donglai shook his head helplessly. The old man was old and had little interest in watching lively scenes. He had already wondered if he should go upstairs and take out Li Tianlan, who had slept for 2 days. The silent confrontation in front of the TV continued. Wang Yuetong kept reaching out and became calmer. "Give it to me." Dongqing Rushi looked up at Wang Yuetong. Her eyes were as clear as water, and her small hand subconsciously clenched the remote control in her hand. Wang Yuetong did not urge her. She just reached out and waited quietly. But no one doubted that she would be savage when she was impatient. She was now just a young expert who had not yet entered the fire-flaming realm. In the face of Dongqing Rushi of the thunder-shocking realm, there was a huge gap in their combat strength. But as 2 women who had the same man, the martial arts realm was actually nothing. Dongqing Rushi hesitated, pursed her lips, and handed the remote control to Wang Yuetong. Her expression was neither aggrieved nor angry. She just looked at her quietly. Wang Yuetong took the remote control with many buttons and aimed it at the TV. Although it was called a television, it was actually a giant screen that was almost beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Its specifications were almost equivalent to the sum of 2 giant screens in a movie theater. The screen occupied the entire front wall of the hall, and it was so domineering that it was almost exaggerated. It was installed here by Wang Yuetong herself 3 years ago. It was installed according to the specifications of the Beihai Province Police Department Command Center. All the functions were available, and the TV broadcast function was just the tip of the iceberg. Wang Yuetong pressed several buttons. The image of the cat and mouse that occupied the entire wall began to shrink. The huge screen might look very comfortable, but it was hard for the eyes to accept after a long time. Wang Yuetong adjusted the picture to a more comfortable size, handed the remote control back to Dongqing Rushi and asked, "Is it much better now?" Dongqing Rushi took the remote control in a daze and said obediently, "Thank you." Tianlan should wake up in the evening. I plan to cook dinner for him. Let's go grocery shopping together. Wang Yuetong continued to speak in a lukewarm tone, without kindness or malice. Sure. Dongqing Rushi sat on the sofa and seemed to instinctively make a defensive posture, wrapping her hands around her slender and straight legs. I want Tianlan to accompany me tonight. Wang Yuetong looked down at Dongqing Rushi. Silence. Either she broke out in silence, or she would die in silence. Dongqing Rushi did not break out. She silently held her legs, looking like a doormat. Oh, she said, lowering her head. Wang Yuetong's eyes flickered, and her tone softened unconsciously. I heard that you and Tianlan were born on the same day, the same month, and the same year? For Dongqing Rushi, this was something to be happy about. She looked a little happy, and her face bloomed with a smile. But Wang Yuetong did not make her happy for long. Then I'm older than you. You have to call me sister from now on. Dongqing Rushi's happy little face froze, and she looked at Wang Yuetong quietly. And I've slept with him. I'm the sister in every way. Wang Yuetong looked straight into Dongqing Rushi's eyes. Sister. After a long time, Dongqing Rushi whispered, then turned her head, and her mouth seemed to pout subconsciously. Wang Yuetong nodded. I'm going to change clothes. Let's go shopping together. She turned around and walked into the elevator. Was it over? Was it over? Lin Yuxian, who was still waiting to see a good show, was stunned. There was no quarrel, no abuse, and no fight. One was majestic and strong, and the other was pitiful and resigned. Sister and sister. Were they going to love each other? Lin Yuxian, who was watching, said that he could not accept it. It was absolutely unacceptable. Dongqing Rushi didn't look like the kind of person who would be killed in a second. What's going on? Lin Yuxian looked depressed and annoyed. Good thing. Yu Donglai smiled and fiddled with the chessboard. Boy, do you still want to play? You're going to lose this game. It's really a good thing. Lin Yuxian nodded. But I still have to ask. He hesitated, ignoring Yu Donglai's stare, and walked over with a low smile. Dongqing Rushi was still nestled on the sofa, watching Tom and Jerry, which had shrunk down and was very comfortable. Her eyes were clear, and she seemed to forget the grievances just now. The corners of her mouth were slightly bent, as if she was smiling. Lin Yuxian came over and sat on the sofa on the other side. He looked at Dongqing Rushi and smiled bitterly. Well. He took the initiative to speak. Dongqing Rushi turned to look at him. I can't stand it. Lin Yuxian patted his thigh and felt bitter. She was indeed a bitch, and she was playing with fire here. Why do you call her sister? He meant it. Dongqing Rushi was Li Tianlan's fiancé, which was fully recognized by both families. However, Qin Weibai beat her to it. She had to call her sister. No one would feel ashamed if she lost to Qin Weibai. Now there was Wang Yuetong, and she was also a sister. How aggrieved she felt. She couldn't stand it. You don't like her? Dongqing Rushi looked at Lin Yuxian and asked. It's not about whether I like her or not. This is your family affair. Although the Lin clan and the Wang family of Beihai have a deep relationship, the Lin clan's position is clear now. I'm not familiar with Yuetong. I haven't even met her before, but I've met her brother once. So if you really want to say who is partial, I will definitely support you. She should call you sister. Lin Yuxian said helplessly. Whatever. Dongqing Rushi was indifferent, without the slightest anger. Don't you feel aggrieved? Lin Yuxian looked curious. Not really. Dongqing Rushi thought for a moment and said softly, Tianlan should be happy in this way. Lin Yuxian was stunned and didn't know what to say for a while. Wang Yuetong, who had always ignored Dongqing Rushi, took the initiative to speak. Dongqing Rushi obediently called her sister. There was no doubt that the two women wanted to make their men happy. Lin Yuxian suddenly lost interest in watching the fun. He suddenly felt a little envious. He envied Li Tianlan's luck. Dongqing Rushi sat cross-legged and straightened her body, holding a pillow. She stared at the screen in front of her seriously, but her eyes were not focused. She thought of a lot of things. She thought of Li Tianlan, whom she had heard since she was a child. Li Tianlan, who lived in the depths of her heart and could not be more perfect. Everyone was emphasizing the identity of the fiancé. Grandpa said that he was destined to be a great man in the future, like the current Wang Tianzong, or even like the amazing ancestor of the Wang family of Beihai. Her father said that the Dongqing clan owed him too much. In her memory, it seemed that only her mother had said something different. Her mother said that she would be Li Tianlan's wife in the future, so she owed him. She just hoped that when they were together in the future, she would not forget that the man who became her husband had borne a lot of things that she should have borne, or responsibilities. Yuzhou, the building of the army headquarters. When Dongqing Wudi, the standing minister of the army headquarters, slammed the documents in his hand on his desk, Lieutenant General Bai Qingzhao, the Deputy Secretary General of the army headquarters, was sitting opposite him and drinking tea with a smile. Bai Qingzhao was one of the backbone generals of the giant group, the eldest son of Bai Zhanfang, the patriarch of the Bai family, Bai Qingqian's biological brother, and Dongqing Wudi's brother-in-law. He was originally the deputy commander of the Central Theater of Operations. 2 years ago, after Dongqing Wudi entered the army headquarters from the Border Control Corps, the giant group almost used all its resources to transfer Bai Qingzhao to the post of Deputy Secretary General of the army headquarters. The deputy commander of the Theater of Operations and the Deputy Secretary General of the army headquarters seemed to be similar. It could only be regarded as a small promotion, but the actual meaning was very different. The president of Zhongzhou State was also the minister of the army headquarters, but he rarely interfered with the daily work of the army headquarters. The daily work of the army headquarters was presided over by the standing minister. In the army headquarters, the role that could check and balance the standing minister was not the two deputy ministers, but the secretary general who did not have the rank of marshal. So 2 years ago, even though Qi Beizong, the flag-bearer of the Special Warfare Group, retired from the position of standing minister, the Secretary General was still in office. The strength of the Special Warfare Group still did not suffer too much. Instead, it gained a lot of benefits out of thin air with Qi Beizong's retirement. Dongqing Wudi controlled the army headquarters. After one term, he was bound to replace the Secretary General with his own people. This was the beginning of Dongqing Wudi establishing his authority in the army. Bai Qingzhao was the only candidate for the Secretary General. It could be said that he was one of Dongqing Wudi's most trustworthy people. What's wrong? Bai Qingzhao glanced at the documents that Dongqing Wudi threw on the table, picked them up casually, and said with a smile, "See for yourself." Dongqing Wudi gritted his teeth, and with a gloomy and angry expression he shouted, "Shameless! A bunch of bastards!" Dongqing Wudi rarely completely lost his composure. Even in front of Bai Qingzhao, who could be absolutely trusted, it was a little out of line for him to behave like this. Bai Qingzhao raised his eyebrows and calmly glanced at the documents that Dongqing Wudi threw on the table. The documents were delivered by Dongqing Wudi's secretary a few minutes ago. At first, both sides didn't take it seriously. Who knew that Dongqing Wudi just glanced at them and directly exploded? Bai Qingzhao had no idea that something big would happen in the military that made Dongqing Wudi lose his composure like this. The document was very thin. Including the cover, there were only 4 or 5 pages. Bai Qingzhao glanced at the cover and subconsciously narrowed his eyes. On the cover was a pale golden city, built between 2 snow-capped peaks, majestic and heavy. This was the emblem of Kunlun City. In other words, this was a document from Kunlun City? Bai Qingzhao seemed to think of something and directly opened the document. He glanced at it in a hurry, and his expression suddenly changed. The content of the document was not complicated, and it could even be said to be clear at a glance. It was about the maneuver of the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy at the end of the month. Kunlun City officially approved the maneuver applications of the two academies. At the same time, it verified the maneuver rules of the two academies and the sequence of the maneuver. At the end of the document were the seals of Kunlun City, the President's office, and the Cabinet. This showed that both the President and the Prime Minister had approved this document. "You've gone too far." Bai Qingzhao gritted his teeth and suppressed his anger in his tone. Dong Chengwudi calmed down instead. He took the document again and glanced at it carefully. Then he threw it on the table with cold eyes. "What do you think?" Bai Qingzhao was silent for a while and asked in a deep voice. Dong Chengwudi shook his head with a sneer. Tianlan grows up too fast. The Li family's comeback also makes some people unable to sit still. So they can't help but be ruthless and make such a maneuver rules. Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai really have a tacit understanding. "Is there still room for maneuver?" Bai Qingzhao asked in a low voice. As soon as he spoke, he shook his head first and smiled bitterly. If there was really room for maneuver, how could Dong Chengwudi lose his composure like this? No matter what they plan in private, at least they do it in line with the rules, Dong Chengwudi said. The president, Bai Qingzhao, hesitated. He can't wait for Kunlun City to do this. Dong Chengwudi sneered and was a little unhappy. The academics can take advantage of this opportunity to get closer to them. What Kunlun City did was in line with the rules, but it broke them. In this situation, if I want to do something, I can only ignore the rules. The giant group is not powerful enough, so it must ask for help from the academics. This kind of thing can only be good for the academics. Besides, they didn't do it, so we don't hate them. The academics will push the boat with the current. Of course, the president will agree. Bai Qingzhao was silent. What are you going to do? After a long time, he asked slowly. Do I have a choice? Dong Chengwudi said calmly. In this situation, I can only take one step at a time. Kunlun City broke the rules, so I can only be lawless for once. Otherwise, what can I do? He glanced at Bai Qingzhao and smiled bitterly. If he really did nothing this time, then the Bai family and the Dongqing clan might really break up completely. Fortunately, we're not completely unprepared. Wan Tian has gone to the Eastern Theater of Operations. Isn't this what we're guarding against Kunlun City? Dong Chengwudi said softly. In this case, the Border Control Corps really can't be saved. Bai Qingzhao frowned. There's always a deal. Dong Chengwudi took a deep breath and gritted his teeth. Then he calmly picked up his mobile phone and dialed a number. The phone was quickly connected, and a low voice sounded on the other end of the line. Ziyuan, this is Dong Chengwudi. How's the scenery in Tiannan? Dong Chengwudi laughed. He didn't call Wang Wantian, the current commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations, but Ning Ziyuan, the former commander. The Dongqing clan had prepared for all of this long before the Yuzhou conference began. Ning Ziyuan was transferred to Tiannan. Wang Wantian was transferred to the Eastern Theater of Operations. It was all part of the preparation. So now Dong Chengwudi was angry, but he didn't panic. The so-called game, no matter how complicated it was nothing more than dealing with every move. Chapter 351. Second update. The night rain was still falling. When Li Tianlan opened his eyes, the study was dark and quiet. The rain outside hit the glass messily, and the sound was particularly clear. He stood up and moved his body. He poured himself a glass of warm water and drank it. He suddenly became energetic. The phone on the desk seemed to have been touched. Li Tianlan opened the phone and looked at it. There were no text messages or missed calls. He shook his head hard, lit a cigarette, and opened the window casually. The rain was getting heavier. The rain fell on the lake, and the ripples on the lake continued to spread in the night. The treetops swayed gently in the wind. The light in the courtyard of East Emperor Palace was hazy, with dense water vapor. It was obviously a brilliant summer, but the scene was a little bleak and lonely. Li Tianlan looked at the rain outside the window quietly, and the light in his eyes became more and more calm. Today, his martial arts had reached the basic level, and he stood at the peak that he had never reached under normal conditions. But the peak was not perfect. This imperfection was not because he advanced too fast, nor because his body was too fragile, but because his strength and will were out of balance. In 3 years he went all the way to the north, through mountains, rivers, seas, polar glaciers, grasslands, deserts, wind, frost, rain and snow. He almost never stopped. His martial arts was like his road to the north, which was walked step by step in silence. It was extremely solid and stable, and the accumulated sword intent was absolutely pure. His body could bear such difficult training, but his will could not bear the wind, frost, and loneliness of these 3 years. Now even if he returned to Huading from the polar region, it was difficult for him to make up for his essence, qi, and spirit in a short time. The imbalance between will and strength meant that he had strength but not enough concentration. Without a will as firm as steel, it was difficult for his sword intent to reach the real purity and peak. The only way Li Tianlan could think of now was to sleep. Only with sufficient and comfortable rest could he gradually adjust his spirit, qi, and spirit back to normal. Li Tianlan looked out of the window, and for a moment, his mind was wandering. His essence, qi, and spirit were damaged, but he did not need to worry about recovery because of his previous foundation. So at this moment he thought more of the year in the desert. That year he fell from a high place to a low valley. He abandoned his cultivation of the thunder-shocking realm, and started over again. That year, he had crawled in the dark, narrow, and silent labyrinth below the desert prison, where he could only hear his own heartbeat. He had experienced countless times of despair, depression, fear, and madness. Only then did he develop an absolute will that was comparable to the heavenly king heart. Without the experiences of that year, with his original willpower, it would have been impossible for him to have survived those 3 years of destruction. Everything seemed like a coincidence, but it also seemed like an inevitability. He remembered the first words the 2 metaphysical grandmasters said to him when he first met Xian Xuanzi and Great Master Wu Wei. Trust in heaven's will? The mandate of heaven was right before their eyes. Even if they did not believe it, they could not disrespect it. The door of the study was gently pushed open from the outside. Wang Yuetong came in and looked at Li Tianlan, who was smoking silently. She said softly, "You're awake?" Li Tianlan nodded and said, "I am hungry. The food Rushi and I cooked may not be as good as Senior Yu's. Would you like to try it?" Wang Yuetong said with a smile. Her voice was soft and her eyes were enchanting. After turning from a girl to a woman, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai was not stingy with her charm in front of Li Tianlan. She really wanted to quietly bloom beside Li Tianlan for a lifetime. "Yuan Rushi?" Li Tianlan threw the cigarette, but out of the window with a strange look in his eyes. "I've made a deal with her." Wang Yuetong nodded and said, "She will call me sister in the future." Li Tianlan suddenly had nothing to say. Even if he was an immortal, he could not figure out why Dongqing Rushi called Wang Yuetong sister in a short time. "Of course, I'm destined not to be compared with Sister Little Bai. Even if Dongqing Rushi calls me sister, she won't like me in her heart, and I won't like her either. But we will inevitably meet in the future. We will be by your side in the future. We can't pretend not to know each other for the rest of our lives. That would be too embarrassing." Wang Yuetong came over and hugged Li Tianlan, leaning in his arms and whispering. "In the future?" Li Tianlan said subconsciously and gently stroked her short hair with his palm. "Yes, in the future." Wang Yuetong nodded and said in a firm tone, "Tianlan, I'll resign. I'll stay by your side from now on." Li Tianlan paused for a while and then said, "Okay." Wang Yuetong laughed in his arms. She rubbed against Li Tianlan and whispered, "When you were sleeping, my dad called me. He wanted me to go home." "What did you say?" Li Tianlan was silent for a while, and then asked slowly. "I said I won't go back." Wang Yuetong was in a daze. Thinking about the phone call, she said in a complicated tone, "So my dad asked me to go home." Li Tianlan held Wang Yuetong tightly and did not speak. "Go home. Go home." It seemed to have similar meanings, but the meaning was completely different. The former meant that she would not come back after going home. The latter meant that she would not go back again after going home. At least she would not go back before there was a clear result between Li Tianlan and the Wang family of Beihai. Li Tianlan lowered his head and kissed Wang Yuetong's hair gently. The former little princess trembled slightly in his arms. "Do you regret it?" Li Tianlan whispered. "As long as you don't abandon me in the future, I won't regret it." Wang Yuetong's voice was very soft, almost like a whisper. After all, she was a woman who was so extravagant that she would rather gamble with her life. She would be perturbed, uneasy, confused, and at a loss for such a gamble. As for whether she would regret it or not, it all depended on the man she chose in the end. This responsibility was so heavy that it was clearer than that of the Li family, which was close at hand but far at the same time. "Don't worry." Li Tianlan paused and then said, "Thank you." Wang Yuetong smiled, raised her head, and reached out to touch Li Tianlan's face. She whispered, "When I come back, I will not be the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai, but your woman." Li Tianlan patted her on the back and whispered, "When are you leaving?" "After dinner." Wang Yuetong whispered, "Take me to the airport." Li Tianlan nodded and said, "Okay. I want you to carry me downstairs." Wang Yuetong stepped back from Li Tianlan and opened her arms. Li Tianlan smiled, picked her up, and went downstairs. Everyone downstairs was there. Lin Yuxian and Yu Donglai sat at the dinner table. Dongqing Rushi was serving rice. The meal was very sumptuous. But because of the relationship between Dongqing Rushi and Wang Yuetong, the dinner was neither salty nor plain. Li Tianlan had a good appetite. For him, as long as the two women did not fight on the spot, there would be a relatively harmonious day in the future. After dinner, Li Tianlan drove Wang Yuetong to the airport. Wang Yuetong booked a ticket on the way and changed her boarding pass at the airport. Li Tianlan watched Wang Yuetong pass the security check. Wang Yuetong did not say much from beginning to end. She just hugged Li Tianlan hard before leaving and whispered, "Wait for me to come back." Her figure passed the security check and gradually disappeared at the end of the passage. Li Tianlan pulled his collar and turned to leave the airport. When the black Audi left along the road, a group of dignified and calm Mercedes-Benz cars slowly entered the airport and passed by Li Tianlan. The night rain was getting heavier and heavier, and the thunder was looming high in the sky. In the airport near midnight, two middle-aged men walked out of the airport steadily with a beautiful girl. 6 Mercedes-Benz cars were parked on the road outside the airport. Nearly 20 burly men in uniform black suits stood silently in the rain at night. The moment the 2 men and a woman walked out of the airport in silence, everyone bowed at the same time. "Welcome, Your Highness." The 2 middle-aged men got on the Mercedes-Benz at the front. The beautiful girl got on the other car. The motorcade slowly left the airport. In the Mercedes-Benz at the front, Gu Xingyun, who had arrived in Huading 1 day earlier, looked pale and weak. He lowered the window, lit a cigarette and coughed softly. Gu Qianchuan, who had been with him all the time, received a text message. He took out his mobile phone and looked at it. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, and he said calmly, "The cabinet and the office of the president have agreed on the rules of the maneuver of the 2 academies." As expected, Gu Xingyun smiled. This is all within the scope of the rules. Rules and rules are often different things, but sometimes they are the same thing. In the special warfare system, no matter what, Kunlun City has the final say. This is both a rule and a rule. What about the giant group? Gu Qianchuan frowned and glanced at Gu Xingyun. Now he had confirmed Gu Xingyun's injury. Even Gu Xingyun was almost completely disabled by the blow of the murderous weapon, and his combat capability was greatly reduced. It was impossible for him to recover without a few years. Even if he had time, it would depend on his own luck. If the maneuver of the 2 academies had not been too important and related to the face of Kunlun City, Gu Xingyun would not have come in person. Now the power of Kunlun City was really in the hands of Gu Qianchuan, and the relationship between him and Gu Xingyun seemed to have eased a lot. The maneuver of the 2 academies is a big event. No one can destroy it. Otherwise, it is really breaking and trampling on the rules. What else can Dongqing Wudi do unless he wants to commit political suicide? Gu Xingyun coughed and said in a flat tone, I'm afraid that there will be an accident, Gu Qianchuan said calmly. How can the madman of the Dongqing clan be rational when he is crazy? That's true. Gu Xingyun nodded. But the question is it worth it for Li Tianlan? He glanced at Gu Qianchuan and continued, and even if there is an accident, you are there. If an accident really happens, you will personally kill Li Tianlan in the maneuver. He paused and said gloomily, at any cost. Gu Qianchuan narrowed his eyes, nodded, and said, where are we going? The Sky Academy? To Winter Mountain. Gu Xingyin shook his head. I have an appointment with an expert. Maybe he can give us some advice about the future situation. Gu Qianchuan nodded with a smile, but he curled his lips calmly. What kind of so-called expert are you thinking? Bullshit. Isn't it your cheap father-in-law, Xian Xuanzi? Chapter 352. When it was almost dawn, it finally turned into heavy rain after a whole day. The rolling thunder roared wantonly in the sky. It was windy and hooting. The rain became heavier and finally became a rainstorm that was extremely rare and hooting. The rainstorm engulfed the whole city. In the dim lights, the crazy rain seemed to be the only sound in the whole city. In the pouring rain, a white-haired Xian Xuanzi, wearing a light blue Taoist robe, holding a horsetail whisk in one hand and an umbrella in the other, walked quietly on the road to the top of Mount Dong. Mount Dong was known as the back garden of the whole Huating. There were many mansions and scenic spots, so the road was extremely smooth. However, it was a rainy day and it was late at night. The smooth mountain road was still slippery. Xian Xuanzi walked very slowly, but his footsteps were extremely firm. It was raining heavily. In a blue Taoist robe and a black umbrella, he walked alone in the dark night because of the heavy rain. His figure was like an inconspicuous black spot. There were many mansions on Mount Dong. However, Xian Xuanzi did not go to any mansion, but went straight to the top of the mountain. The mountain road looked more and more serene in the heavy rain. The top of the mountain looked distant and cold. Xian Xuanzi walked forward unhurriedly. He did not walk fast, but his pace was the same and never slowed down. The top of the mountain lit up with a vague and hazy light in the heavy rain. The light illuminated a small ancient and solemn building. Xian Xuanzi's calm face looked a little weird in the night. He knew what the building was illuminated by the light. The building, with a history of hundreds of years, could be regarded as the holy land of the southeast coast for some people with faith. Xian Xuanzi also had faith, but he believed in the three pure ones. And the top of the mountain, it was a church. The most famous Zhongshan Cathedral on the top of Mount Dong. The place illuminated by the light was the destination of Xian Xuanzi's trip. Xian Xuanzi walked closer and closer. The light swayed in the wind and rain, illuminating the bell tower of the church in the heavy rain. Xian Xuanzi stood calmly in front of the church. The European-style church, the sage-like Taoist priest, the black umbrella in the rain, and the light on the bell tower. The rain poured down, and the wind blew past. In the darkness of the night, this scene looked strange yet harmonious. Xian Xuanzi took a deep breath, pushed open the half-closed door, and walked in. He put the black umbrella at the door casually, and the water stains soaked the ground that had not been hit by the rain. The space inside the bell tower was very small. The cross was placed in the center of the bell tower. The lights in the bell tower were on, illuminating everything inside. Xian Xuanzi entered the church and the bell tower. The white horsetail whisk hung in his hands, and his Taoist robe was neat and tidy. As he stood in the bell tower, the atmosphere became increasingly strange. But what was even stranger was that there wasn't a Taoist priest in this Catholic church. In front of the cross, there was even a monk dressed in a monk's robe. Bald head, Buddhist beads, monk robes, all these were even more conspicuous than Xian Xuanzi's outfit. The two of them stared at each other across the cross. The scene was incongruous to the extreme. It's been 3 years, but the Heavenly King's demeanor is still the same as before. Congratulations. The monk looked at Xian Xuanzi with a meaningful smile, without the tranquility and peace of a monk. Xian Xuanzi suddenly raised his eyebrows. Heavenly King. That was how Xian Xuanzi addressed him, not as a Taoist priest. In terms of seniority, he was of the same generation as Xian Xuanzi's master. In this situation, although Buddhism and Taoism were different, Xian Xuanzi deserved to be called martial uncle. But Xian Xuanzi called him Heavenly King. He was indeed a heavenly king now, the 13th heavenly king of Samsara Palace that few people knew. Your master and I are of the same generation. Xian Xuanzi narrowed his eyes and said indifferently, My master is gone, so you are no longer an elder. Is it wrong for me to call you Heavenly King? The monk's eyes were sharp, with clear aggression. Yes. Xian Xuanzi was silent for a while before he said calmly, Are you Ruzhen or Rui? He knew that great master Wu Wei had 2 disciples, and he had even seen them more than once, but he had never seriously remembered their Buddhist names before. I'm Ruzhen. The monk put his palms together and saluted. Are you here tonight for revenge? Xian Xuanzi's eyes were a little strange, with self-mockery. 3 years ago, I stabbed the horsetail whisk into Wu Wei's heart with my own hands. Are you here for this cause and effect? Heavenly King, you misunderstood me. Ruzhen insisted on calling Xian Xuanzi with a smile impeccable. Xian Xuanzi smiled and looked at the rain through the window of the bell tower. The winter mountain under the rain was full of vitality. He narrowed his eyes and said softly, How do you know my contact information? I can contact the military counselor. Ruzhen said lightly, You are now the Heavenly King of Samsara. I can contact the military counselor, so I can find you. Xian Xuanzi said casually, Who is the military counselor? Ruzhen was silent as expected and reasonable. Xian Xuanzi said coldly, Since you don't believe me, why do you come to me? Heavenly King owes my Qingyun temple a cause and effect. Ruzhen's tone also became cold. 3 years ago, Xian Xuanzi went to Qingyun temple to visit Great Master Wu Wei, and directly stabbed the horsetail whisk in his hand into Great Master Wu Wei's heart. Great Master Wu Wei died to fulfill Li Tianlan's wish. But Xian Xuanzi's original actions could be regarded as the cause of a series of events. In the end, you just want revenge, don't you? Xian Xuanzi laughed sarcastically. If you want revenge, you can't live until now. Ruzhen said unceremoniously, I'm looking for you today just to ask you to return a cause and effect to Qingyun Temple. Just say it. Xian Xuanzi said expressionlessly. Ruzhen hesitated and said calmly, Heavenly King, please extend a person's life. Who? Xian Xuanzi asked. Qin Weibai. My little junior sister, your current boss. Ruzhen told the truth. She will die? Xian Xuanzi suddenly raised his voice. The reason why he joined the Samsara Palace was that Qin Weibai promised him that she would return his daughter's freedom when Kunlun City was destroyed. But now Qin Weibai was going to die? Xian Xuanzi suddenly felt a little angry. He didn't know what he was angry about. If you are willing to help, she won't die, Ruzhen said calmly. Xian Xuanzi was so angry that he laughed. He snorted heavily and said in a gloomy tone, I can't even see her destiny. Extend her life? How? Will you teach me? Ruzhen was silent. Facing Xian Xuanzi's cold eyes, he slowly took out a Buddha bead. This bead is called death substitution. Ruzhen said calmly, with it, Heavenly King can help. Death substitution. In linen, Ruzhen also gave Qin Weibai a Buddha bead, and told her that it was called death substitution. But there was no doubt that this one was the real death substitution bead. And the one he gave Qin Weibai was called mortal fate. Ruzhen didn't even need to speculate anything. He could be completely sure that at this time, the mortal fate was already with Li Tianlan. Qin Weibai thought that it was a chance to die for her. With how much she cherished and valued Li Tianlan, how could she be willing to use such a precious opportunity herself? She must give it to Li Tianlan. Only with Li Tianlan could Qin Weibai's mortal fate not be destroyed. In this way, he could extend Qin Weibai's life with the real death substitution bead. That was possible. Death substitution, Xian Xuanzi muttered to himself, and his eyes narrowed. Is it the Buddha's relic of that senior? It's the Grand Master's relic. Ruzhen nodded and handed the Buddha bead to Xian Xuanzi. I didn't expect there to be such a thing. Xian Xuanzi sighed with some disbelief, and then said with some doubt, if there was this thing, Wu Wei wouldn't have died at all. Why? Master said 3 years ago that he could live, but he had to die. There was finally a trace of sadness in Ruzhen's eyes. Great Master Wu Wei might be the only one who knew Qin Weibai's origin, and because of this he could see the future. Before he left death, substitution, and mortal fate. He seemed to have arranged everything today quietly. He could not die because of the death substitution bead. He had to die. In addition to fulfilling Li Tianlan's wish, it was more to leave Qin Weibai the last glimmer of life. Another fool who actively seeks death. Xian Xuanzi thought of Great Master Wu Wei and muttered to himself. Ruzhen didn't speak. Is it worth it? Xian Xuanzi asked. Is it worth it for an adopted daughter who is not your biological daughter? Ruzhen looked silent. What is Qin Weibai's origin? Xian Xuanzi looked at Ruzhen and said. Wu Wei erased all traces for her. As for her origin, it was also well hidden. The Wang family of Beihai, Kunlun City, and Zhongzhou State have investigated, but they found nothing. Do you know? She came from a small mountain village in the southwest. Xian Xuanzi said flatly. When Master met my junior sister, I was there. That year, there was a blizzard in the southwest, and junior sister was lying in the snow. She looked to be about 6 or 7 years old, and her body was covered in blood. Both her internal and external injuries were fatal, but she was very conscious. When we discovered her, she also discovered us. He paused and said strangely. She just looked at her. You couldn't imagine her injuries at that time. Her internal organs were all severely damaged, and it was as if someone had crushed her bones and torn her muscles. It was as if the person who wanted to kill her wanted to torture her in the cruelest way possible, and then casually threw her into the snow to freeze her to death. But she didn't have any fear or pain in that kind of injury and situation. When we found her, she just looked at us calmly, and it could even be said that she was examining us. He shook his head in disbelief. Later, Master took my junior sister back and took good care of her for more than a year. Then she slowly got better. But you still tell me that she came from a small mountain village in the southwest? Xian Xuanzi asked. We did pick up my junior sister in a mountainous area in the southwest. I don't know her origin. Only Master and my junior sister know it. Ruzhen shook his head and said. But it doesn't matter. You don't need to know this to prolong her life. Prolong her life? Xian Xuanzi's tone was complicated. What if I don't agree? Ruzhen didn't answer this question, but said calmly. This place is very important in the intelligence of Samsara Palace. It is said that several private priests are secret pawns of Kunlun City. It's a good place. It's surrounded by rich people. Maybe some secrets can be exposed when someone prays. Even if there are no secrets, it's a good place to build a stronghold here. Ruzhen looked at Xian Xuanzi, whose expression changed a little, and said slowly, I asked you to meet, and you asked me to wait for you here. I'm afraid you don't just want to see me, do you? I heard that Gu Xingyan came to Huiding with his daughter and Gu Qianchuan. Xian Xuanzi's face was completely gloomy. I won't do anything. If you don't agree, I won't leave. It's you who will have a hard time, and it has nothing to do with me. If you die, you'll pay back the karma. Ruzhen's smile was a little cold. But the problem is, as the only metaphysics grandmaster left in Zhongzhou State, are you willing to die? Xian Xuanzi's lips trembled fiercely. Of course, he was unwilling to die. Not for the so-called status and reputation, but for his daughter and granddaughter. Even if I'm willing to take action, it's too late today. There's not enough time. Xian Xuanzi took a deep breath and clenched the death scapegoat bead in his hand. Enough time? Ruzhen said calmly, just right. Not enough time. Xian Xuanzi was a little irritable. The death scapegoat bead also needs someone to die for it. Where is the person? To die for Qin Weibai. It must be someone who has something to do with her. If the person is not here, then other arrangements are needed. There's not enough time. There's no need for other arrangements. Ruzhen said softly. All of Xian Xuanzi's words suddenly stopped. He looked straight at Ruzhen. Ruzhen laughed. She's my little junior sister. I have something to do with her, right? Lin and Qin Weibai asked him about his future plans. He said that everything was up to fate. Tonight, in the bell tower of this church, this was his fate. Xian Xuanzi then understood why Ruzhen, who had been out of this world, was so unworldly tonight. Ruzhin slowly sat on the ground. I have nothing to worry about, he said. Come on. I want to serve my master as soon as possible. The storm outside the bell tower did not stop at all. A fire lit up in the bell tower. The fire flickered and flickered, flickering. Time passed slowly. The mountain road in the heavy rain in winter mountain lit up. A row of Mercedes cars passed through the heavy rain at night, and slowly stopped in front of the church. Gu Xingyin got out of the car alone, looked up at the light of the bell tower, and turned to look at the girl who got out of another car. You go up with me. Gu Xingyin glanced at the girl and said calmly. The light in the bell tower seemed to dim a little. Xian Xuanzi sat alone in the bell tower, and his face was a little pale. The death scapegoat bead in his hand had completely disappeared. Ruzhin. It also disappeared. Only some dust was floating in the air, and finally fell to the ground. It was blown away by the wind outside the window and disappeared. Xian Xuanzi Wuwei. In addition, Ruzhin, a real eminent monk, finally used a death scapegoat bead to exchange for a trace of Qin Weibai's earthly fate. Another fool. Xian Xuanzi whispered. There were footsteps outside the bell tower. The door of the attic was pushed open. Gu Xingyun's figure appeared at the door. Behind him was a girl who was about 20 years old. A picturesque young girl with a beauty that could topple cities. The girl was tall and slender, and her face was delicate and beautiful. She wore a light green dress, and her eyes were bright and beautiful. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, and every move she made was filled with the liveliness and charm of youth. She was very obedient and gentle. She stood there casually, but for a moment, she seemed to suppress the light. Vaguely, she had a kind of charm that could steal people's souls. Gu Xingyin stared at the girl, and the corners of his mouth were trembling. Unconsciously, his face was already covered with tears. Qingcheng, this is Grandpa. Gu Xingyin looked at Xian Xuanzi and said calmly. Chapter 353. As the heir of the Wang family of Beihai, and one of the most eye-catching protagonists of the maneuver of the two academies, Wang Shengxiao knew the content of the maneuver even faster than Dongqing Wudi. The special warfare system and the dark world had always been absolutely fair and absolutely unfair. In this field where strength was respected and all rules were primitive and rough, absolute privileges also had the capital to be more unimpeded, and even unscrupulous than in other fields. What Wang Shengxiao got was not an official document, but a temporarily printed fax. The pale gold city representing the emblem of Kunlun City on the fax was still clear, looking majestic and solemn. The frenzied torrential rain pounded the whole city. In the luxury suite on the top floor of the Huading chief mansion, Wang Shengxiao, who had just taken a bath and was wearing a bathrobe, looked at the pale gold city on the fax with cold and sarcastic eyes. There was only the emblem of Kunlun City on the fax, without the signatures of the office of the president and the cabinet. It could be seen that as soon as this information was sent out of Kunlun City, it was immediately sent to Huading, even at the same speed as it was sent to the office of the president and the cabinet. When countless big shots in Zhongzhou State, including the presidents of the two academies, did not know the rules and content of the final maneuver, Wang Shengxiao had read the information twice. The information approved by Kunlun City was not complicated, and the content was relatively simple. It was about the content and rules of the final maneuver of the two academies. The content was almost the same as the rules of every previous maneuver. The only change was just a few words, and they were concentrated on the first line of the first page. But the change of just a few words was enough to make the final maneuver extraordinary. Wang Shengxiao threw the information in his hand aside, his face indifferent. The subtle changes in the information were undoubtedly extremely beneficial to him, but there was no joy in his expression, only a trace of subtle but real sarcasm. It's superfluous. I have a guilty conscience. He glanced at the information on the table and whispered to himself. What's superfluous? A hoarse but extremely sexy voice sounded behind Wang Shengxiao. Song Xiai, who was also in a bathrobe, came over, tilted her head, and wiped her long hair with a towel. Wang Shengxiao moved his body. Song Xiai sat in Wang Shengxiao's arms and handed him the towel. You help me. Kunlun City has already set the rules for the final maneuver of the two academies. It's ridiculous. Wang Shengxiao carefully wiped Song Si's long hair and said in a calm tone. From his angle, Song Si's slender neck and beautiful side face were clearly visible. After the passion faded, there was still a flush on her face, which made her lonely and indifferent aura dissipate a lot, making her look charming and languid. Song Si picked up the document and glanced at it. She suddenly raised her eyebrows and chuckled. So exaggerated? She saw the first detailed rule at first glance. The minute changes that were enough to affect the overall situation were all in the first one. I really don't know how nervous Kunlun City is to come up with such a rule. Song Si didn't continue to read. She threw the materials aside, sat in Wang Shengxiao's arms, and put her arms around his neck. They can't afford to lose. Wang Shengxiao put his arms around Song Si's slender waist without any excess fat and shook his head. The short rise time is still the most obvious weakness of Kunlun City. If Gu Hanshan loses to Li Tianlan in the final maneuver, the reputation of Kunlun City is bound to be greatly affected. The key is that Li Tianlan's identity is too sensitive. He's the heir of the Li family. If Gu Hanshan loses, it's tantamount to telling everyone that even if the Gu family overthrew the Li family and became the war god clan of Zhongzhou state, they will never catch up with the Li family. But what Kunlun City is doing now may not be very glorious, and they even dragged you into it. Why did Uncle Wang agree? Song Si was a little confused. She looked at Wang Shengxiao, whose face was a little ugly, and twisted her body subtly in his arms. Feeling the change of his face, Song Si laughed. It was not coquettish, but with a kind of indescribable wildness. Behave yourself. Wang Shengxiao slapped Song Si's plump buttocks, shook his head, and said, I think my father should be tired of continuing to entangle with the Li family. Kunlun City wants to drag me into this, but they are the masterminds after all. This time, the impact on the Wang family of Beihai is not big, and the impact mainly depends on the result. If we lose, Kunlun City's action this time is because they have a guilty conscience. But if we win and guide them well, this time, the cooperation between Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai will be like a lion fighting a rabbit, and the impact may not be so bad. Song Si casually played with a strand of her black hair, thinking without saying a word. When thinking about problems, Song Si was like an unsheathed sword, shining brightly. Even in front of Wang Shengxiao, her elegance was still not reduced. I can get this information, so Gu Hanshan must have gotten it earlier than me. Wang Shengxiao put his arms around Song Si and said calmly, he should be here soon. So soon? Song Si was a little surprised. Kunlun City is so nervous, so Gu Hanshan must be more nervous. What's the rainstorm outside the window? If we can nail Li Tianlan this time, even if it's a knife outside, he will come here as soon as possible. Wang Shengxiao said in a sarcastic tone. Song Si looked at Wang Shengxiao. She sensed his emotions. You don't like this rule? Song Si asked. I just don't think it's necessary. Wang Shengxiao shook his head. It's superfluous. Gu Hanshan doesn't deserve to join hands with me. This sentence, Wang Shengxiao said straightforwardly. His face was calm, but his eyebrows were full of loftiness. Song Si looked at Wang Shengxiao quietly, her eyes soft and a little surprised. Before Li Tianlan appeared, Gu Hanshan was the only one of the younger generation who could be compared with Wang Shengxiao. The wind and thunder veins and the heavenly king heart had their own advantages and disadvantages. Song Si never thought that Wang Shengxiao would look down on Gu Hanshan so much. What do you think of Gu Hanshan? Song Si asked softly. The Gu family's heritage is actually not shallow, but its foundation is not deep. Its inheritance is top-notch, but slightly mediocre. Gu Hanshan is too obsessed and narrow-minded. He has the heavenly king heart, but it's difficult for him to exert his potential. He's far inferior to me. Wang Shengxiao said without thinking. What about Li Tianlan? Song Si asked softly. Wang Shengxiao looked hesitant. Amazing talent. In any era, Li Tianlan can be said to be the kind of person with unparalleled talent. There are too many fetters ahead of him. It's not easy to rebuild the Li family. He wants too much. Although the Li family is making a comeback, Li Tianlan's road has not really begun. Since he entered the secular world, he has been dormant for 3 years after the final battle of Heaven Capital. What does he want in his style of doing? Now he has no chance to show it at all, and I don't know. If he can win the final maneuver, he will have a little chance to exert his revenge. Wang Shengxiao said slowly. Speaking of Li Tianlan himself, he is a very pure person, and his boldness in martial arts is beyond the reach of ordinary people. If I were him, I would be inferior to him, and he would be inferior to me. Song Xiai looked at Wang Shengxiao with a smile in her eyes and eyebrows. She liked this kind of Wang Shengxiao, who commented on his future enemies in a straightforward and confident manner. He never overestimated others or despised his opponents. When he talked about others, he was always measuring himself. That was a kind of boldness and broad-mindedness that could look at the whole world. He might not be as pure as Li Tianlan, but this kind of Wang Shengxiao was what the Wang family of Beihai needed most. Otherwise, he would not have said that if their roles were reversed, he would be inferior to Li Tianlan, and Li Tianlan would be inferior to him. The doorbell rang. Look, it's coming, Wang Shengxiao said with a chuckle. Song Xiai stood up in Wang Shengxiao's arms and stretched lazily. I'm going back to my room to sleep. Wang Shengxiao also stood up and nodded casually. Song Xiai returned to the room in a bathrobe. Wang Shengxiao, who was also in a bathrobe, opened the door. Gu Hanshan, the young master of Kunlun City, stood outside with a light smile. Compared to my disturbance tonight, I think the news we just received is the most important. Of course. Wang Shengxiao laughed. Facing Gu Hanshan, he was no longer as unhappy as when he had just received the news. This is a good thing, he said with an extremely sincere expression. Gu Hanshan also held a piece of information that was exactly the same as Wang Shengxiao's. When he heard Wang Shengxiao's statement, he seemed to be slightly relieved. He walked into the suite, sat on the luxurious sofa in the living room, and went straight to the point. So let's join hands? I totally agree. Wang Shengxiao smiled, but he sighed softly in his heart. In fact, putting aside the past of the Wang family of Beihai and the Li family, he did not have a bad impression of Li Tianlan. If it were Li Tianlan sitting here tonight, he might be happier. But in Jianghu, who could do whatever he wanted, it was all involuntary. I've watched many videos of Li Tianlan's moves. Jiang Shangyu and I have analyzed it and finally come to a conclusion. Gu Hanshan sat on the sofa and said in a calm tone. Wang Shengxiao listened attentively. The swordsmanship of the Li family is broad and profound, and the 24 moves of sword are all-encompassing. So in our current realm, we can hardly see any weakness in Li Tianlan's sword intent. Gu Hanshan said slowly. Li Tianlan's weakness is his body. After the Battle of Heaven Capital, he started from scratch. In 3 years he has today's combat capability. Not to mention whether his realm is stable or not, at least his body can't bear his progress. So if I'm right, Li Tianlan's wind and thunder veins should not exist. His current sword intent is extremely fierce and pure, but it's too hard and easy to break. His attack is powerful, but his defense must be extremely weak, even beyond imagination. This is Li Tianlan's weakness, the most fatal weakness. Wang Shengxiao nodded thoughtfully, but he did not speak. Gu Hanshan waited for a long time and finally couldn't help but ask, "What do you think?" "I agree with your speculation," Wang Shengxiao said calmly. "In terms of sword intent, I'm not as good as him, but in terms of physical strength, he's not as good as me." He pointed to the information brought by Gu Hanshan and said with a chuckle, "So in this final maneuver, he won't have any chance." Gu Hanshan also laughed, carefree and wantonly. When Gu Hanshan arrived at the chief mansion, and conspired with Wang Shengxiao, in the East Emperor Palace, Li Tianlan, who was about to rest with Dongqing Rushi, also received a call from Zhuang Huayang, the dean of the Sky Academy. "Tianlan, are you asleep?" On the phone, Zhuang Huayang's voice was a little drowsy, as if he had just woken up from a dream. "I'm about to sleep." Li Tianlan smiled, but his hand slid down Dongqing Rushi's neckline and held her soft and plump breasts, which were like mutton fat warm jade. Dongqing Rushi's little face was red. She leaned against Li Tianlan and pressed her head against his chest, her body trembling slightly. I received a message here, but the specific documents haven't been sent yet. I think it's necessary to tell you. Zhuang Huayang smiled and said in a serious tone. Li Tianlan had almost never heard Zhuang Huayang speak in this tone. He frowned, reached out his hand from Dongqing Rushi's collar, and said calmly, "Principal, go ahead." Zhuang Huayang did not speak for a while. Dongqing Rushi, who was leaning on him, was still pressing her head against Li Tianlan. From the moment Li Tianlan put his claws in, she had been pushing against it. Now that he pulled his claws out, the daughter of the Dongqing clan was still pushing against it, even harder and harder. Li Tianlan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He got out of bed. Dongqing Rushi, whose hair was a little messy, raised her head and stared at Li Tianlan with hazy eyes. "It's like this," Zhuang Huayang finally said. "The rules of the final maneuver have been determined, as well as the sequence of the maneuver." Li Tianlan seemed to realize something and narrowed his eyes. "What is the content of the first drill?" He took the initiative to ask. This time, Zhuang Huayang was silent for a long time before he slowly said, "It's a tactical drill, teamwork and reconnaissance." His voice was very soft, but the meaning behind it was extremely rich. Li Tianlan finally sneered. Kunlun City is really bold. Tactical drills, reconnaissance, and camouflage were all very normal drill subjects. The first item, which was also the initial content of the maneuver of the two academies, focused on teamwork. The focus of teamwork was on teamwork. Teamwork was the finale of the final maneuver of the two academies in any session. It was extremely important. It was a collision of teams. Li Tianlan had almost no team now. When Li Beitian and the others were seriously injured, he only had Dongqing Rushi and Du Hanin by his side. What he was going to face was the phantom world of Wang Shengxiao and Song Xiai. It was the 3000 world of Gu Hanshan and Jiang Shangyu. There were also many teams attached to the phantom world and the 3000 world. Simply speaking, on the first day of the maneuver, Li Tianlan would face the cooperation of several super teams. "I got it." Li Tianlan took a deep breath and said blandly. Zhuang Huayang wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Finally, he silently hung up the phone. He knew very well what the main purpose of the office of the president agreeing to this plan was. Li Tianlan was an ally of the academics. After all, not all allies were completely close. Li Tianlan hung up the phone and did not speak for a long time. Dongqing Rushi, who quietly took off her pajamas and hid her body in the quilt, said softly, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Li Tianlan laughed. For the first time since he came back from the polar region, his eyes became so sharp and brilliant. "I just suddenly decided on one thing." "What?" Dongqing Rushi asked. "You can join the East Emperor Palace. But on the day of the final maneuver, I hope you and Du Hanin can abstain." Li Tianlan said slowly word by word. His eyes changed, like a messy rainstorm, like a blazing wildfire. Wind, frost, rain, snow, the scorching sun and stars alternated repeatedly in his eyes, and finally turned into determination. The final maneuver was his first step to the stage of Zhongzhou state. Now Li Honghe had fallen from the invincible realm. Qin Weibai and Situ Tsungyue went to Snow Country. Outside the maneuver, the only one he could rely on was Lin Fengting. But in the maneuver, no matter what he had to face. Chapter 354. For nearly a decade in Zhongzhou state, there had always been a saying in the military that was unpresentable, but taken for granted. The Border Praetorian Corps, known as the most elite super-large comprehensive corps in Zhongzhou state, could even be said to be the private army of the Dongqing clan. In the beginning, Zhongzhou state had secretly called it the Dongqing Corps, but after receiving different degrees of warnings, everyone realized how powerful it was. So the saying of the Dongqing Corps gradually disappeared, and was replaced by another name, the God of Massacre Corps. This was tantamount to saying that the Border Control Corps was Dongqing Wudi's own corps. But after some meaningful and clear remarks were missing, this name was finally acquiesced by all parties. It was true, at least infinitely close. The Border Control Corps was known as the small military headquarters of Zhengzhou State. After the first commander Li Guangtu committed treason, the Border Control Corps naturally began to change from the original small-scale special warfare agency to a military force, and eventually formed a behemoth with a total number of nearly 600,000 troops today. There were 5 trump card armies in the Border Control Corps, namely Thunderbolt, Pegasus, Bloodbath, Wild Sand and Black Dragon, which were stationed in Nanyuan, 3 provinces in the east, Tibet, and Beijiang. They had great influence. In addition, there were 4 independent airborne divisions, 2 special investigation brigades, nearly 20 flying formations, 1 intelligence department, and 6 special warfare brigades. All the institutions were in order. With such strength, even in the whole dark world, it could be called a giant. This was also the capital for Dongqing Wudi to be domineering in Zhengzhou State. For the entire Border Control Corps, Dongqing Wudi, who was not in the invincible realm, was like a god, sacred and majestic. He was the spiritual symbol of the whole corps. The 4 commanders promoted by Dongqing Wudi, Wang Wantian of the Bloodbath Battalion, Shi Hanbing of the Wild Sand Battalion, Xiao Dongzhan of the Pegasus Battalion, and Cheng Huaining of the Black Dragon Battalion, were the pillars of the Border Control Corps. The middle and high-level officers were the foundation of the pillar, and the elite soldiers were the cornerstone of the corps. This was an unbreakable and great whole. It was famous for 2 iron rules, which had now almost become the soul of the Border Control Corps. The first rule was that as long as the Border Control Corps could still fight, the officers must be at the forefront when charging without destroying their own formation. The officers must be at the end when retreating. The marshal was at the forefront, followed by the general, followed by the colonel, and then the lieutenant. The second rule was that under no circumstances would the Border Control Corps keep any captives. Dongqing Wudi once said something that shocked the whole Zhengzhou State. "My soldiers are fighting, not King staying behind to look after children." That's what he said, and that's what he did. Dongqing Wudi had been in charge of the Border Control Corps for more than 20 years. There had been countless border conflicts with the superpowers in the Dark World, India, Snow Country, Annan State, and Gaoshan. No one who made an enemy out of him would survive. Every time they charged, he, dressed in the marshal's uniform, would take the lead and be the last to retreat. With such a marshal, every time the Border Control Corps fought, hundreds of thousands of troops in the Border Control Corps would follow Dongqing Wudi's sword. For more than 20 years, he had forged the fiercest and strongest military soul in the entire Zhengzhou State with the name of God of Massacre. He was invincible and invincible for Zhengzhou State. For decades, Dongqing Wudi was definitely the best commander. A soldier who could make an army of 600,000 die for him. The word great was enough to describe it. Because of his greatness, Dongqing Wudi had a heavier responsibility. Heavier responsibility meant more weighing and thinking. Therefore, Dongqing Wudi was under a lot of pressure, as heavy as a mountain. A few hours had passed since the call with Ning Ziyuan, and Dongqing Wudi still hadn't left the building of the army headquarters. The night in Yuzhou was quiet and solemn. He pushed open the window of the office, and the sultry wind blew in, sweeping away a lot of pungent smoke. Dongqing Wudi squinted at the night sky and remained silent. Bai Qingzhao, the Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters, still stayed in the office, accompanying Dongqing Wudi in silence. "Minister, have you thought it through?" In the long silence, Bai Qingzhao suddenly asked. The office was very quiet, so his voice was hoarse, which even he found harsh. Dongqing Wudi's body seemed to shake. Bai Qingzhao was his brother-in-law. Even though he and Bai Qingqian had been in a cold war for many years, they were still close friends. Most of the time, Bai Qingzhao would not call him by his title, but by his name. Now he called him minister. It could be seen how important Dongqing Wudi's next decision was, especially for the relationship between the Bai family and the Dongqing clan. The document of Kunlun City with the seals of the office of the president and the cabinet was still on the desk. The content of the first maneuver in the document was extremely dazzling. Teamwork. Without thinking at all, Dongqing Wudi knew what Li Tianlan would face in the final maneuver. He would face Wang Shengxiao, Gu Hanshan, Jiang Shangyu, Song Xiai, and others, plus their team. Most of the main forces of the East Emperor Palace were seriously injured. Even if the East Emperor Palace was in its heyday, with Li Tianlan, it would be difficult to face such a lineup. Li Tianlan seemed to be doomed. Whether he could survive the final maneuver and make a comeback, the Li family, which was still alone, could not decide. Sai City, which had lost its strength and the murderous weapon-setting sun, could not decide. Samsara Palace, which was out of reach, could not decide. Only the giant group and Dongqing Wudi had the power and strength to intervene in the final maneuver. As for the academics and the office of the president, they agreed to the document and were waiting for Dongqing Wudi's decision. Bai Qingzhao looked at Dongqing Wudi's back. His eyes were extremely complicated. At the beginning of the month, his father, Bai Zhanfang, and his sister, Bai Qingqian, went to Zhongyuan together. As one of the core members of the Bai family, Bai Qingzhao naturally knew the reason. Li Tianlan's life and death now seemed to be decided in the final maneuver, but in fact, it was in the hands of Dongqing Wudi. No one would doubt that the Dongqing clan did not have this power. As long as Dongqing Wudi was willing to pay the price, not to mention a few young people. Even if Gu Xingyan recovered from his injury and joined hands with Wang Tianzong, Li Tianlan would not die. But Dongqing Wudi's willingness or unwillingness was a swing between family and country. I'm still waiting for news from Ziyuan. Dongqing Wudi said slowly. Does it make sense? Bai Qingzhao said in a low voice. Ning Ziyuan has a deep foundation in the Eastern Theater of Operations, but if he leaves that position, it will be difficult for him to control this maneuver. He will make efforts, but his strength is definitely not enough to turn the tide. You know this. Dongqing Wudi smiled bitterly. Between family and country, he muttered to himself, and his smile was full of bitterness. Anyone who broke the rules would have to pay the price. Kunlun City changed the order of the final maneuver and increased the casualty rate. But all of this was within the scope of Kunlun City's power, that was within the scope permitted by the rules. If Dongqing Wudi wanted to intervene in the final maneuver, it was tantamount to breaking the rules, so he must pay the price. Just like Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai failed to attack Li Honghe, and could only watch the Li family make a comeback, whether they were willing or not. Some things had to be done, and they had to bear the consequences. And the price Dongqing Wudi needed to pay could only come from the Border Control Corps. He was now the executive minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State, and still the commander of the Border Control Corps. This part-time job must be given away, but giving up this position did not mean that the Dongqing clan was willing to give up the dominance of the Border Control Corps. With Dongqing Wudi's foundation and prestige in the Border Control Corps, in a short time, even if all the 4 commanders of the Border Control Corps were removed, the new commander could not quickly establish his own team. By the time the new commander established his authority, Dongqing Wudi had already established his own order in the military. The Wang family of Beihai was extremely enthusiastic about the position of the Border Control Corps. If the Dongqing clan made a deal with the Wang family of Beihai, under normal circumstances, it would not be a one-off deal at all. At least for a few years, it would involve many subtle balances and compromises. That was under normal circumstances. But if Dongqing Wudi risked universal condemnation and broke the rules, the price he had to pay might be the control of the entire Border Control Corps, or at least most of it. What he gave up was more than most of the control. There were also nearly 600,000 soldiers who worshipped him like a god. If the morale of the Border Control Corps was unstable, it would become a national affair. And from the bottom of his heart, Dongqing Wudi did not want to experience the guilt and entanglement of giving up nearly 600,000 troops. Give up? How could he? But if he didn't give up, would he watch Li Tianlan be besieged in the final maneuver? If Li Tianlan died in the final maneuver, not to mention what would happen to Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai, the relationship between him and Bai Qingqian would come to an end. At that time, the poor woman who had made Dongqing Wudi feel guilty for many years would definitely take revenge on the Dongqing clan at all costs. The Bai family and the Dongqing clan parted ways, the giant group split, and the family was separated. This was a family affair. How could there be absolute fairness and justice between families and countries? Dongqing Wudi was lost in thought. This was a choice between family and country, And it was also the entanglement between the responsibility of a husband and the vocation of a soldier. If you had known this, why did you do it? Bai Qingzhao suddenly said. Her tone was light, without sarcasm, anger, or any emotion, as if she were saying a fact similar to 1 + 1 = 2. He really didn't mean to mock the Dongqing clan. The Dongqing clan was not the only one who tried to change. That year, when all the plans started, Dongqing Hongguang and Dongqing Wudi were present. His father, Bai Zhanfeng, was present, and so was Bai Qingzhao himself. They were all in the game. It was just that this game of chess had been played for more than 20 years. For the Li family it was just the beginning, but for them, it had already entered the end stage. From the middle stage to the end stage, the final maneuver was the key of the key. But all the people in the game did not expect that Dongqing Wudi, who was extremely determined because of his responsibility, would become so hesitant at this time because of his responsibility. It was not wrong to choose the Li family back then. Dongqing Wudi said calmly, "We chose the Li family because it was the best choice and the only choice. It was the same more than 20 years ago, and it is still the same today more than 20 years later." Your decision? Bai Qingzhao didn't go to Dongqing Wudi to discuss right and wrong, but just asked with a poker face. Dongqing Wudi fell silent again. His expression kept changing. Under the light of the office, it was clear that he was in pain and entanglement. "No matter what decision you make, I will understand you," Bai Qingzhao said softly. Bai Qingzhao said softly. These were words from the bottom of his heart, and he could understand. But it is limited to understanding. Understanding did not mean approval. Understanding was rational analysis after putting aside one's standpoint. Acknowledging him was a rather callous choice from his own standpoint. If one did not agree, one would be an enemy. The Bai family made a choice back then. Today they would make the same choice. There was no reason, just because of that year. "What do you suggest?" Dongqing Wudi suddenly asked. "Just abandon it." Bai Qingzhao said without hesitation. "It's easy for you to say. Just abandon the 600,000 troops?" Dongqing Wudi looked displeased. "I know it's not easy," Bai Qingzhao said softly. "But are you willing to give up Li Tianlan?" Dongqing Wudi was even more displeased. If he was willing, why should he be entangled now? He put Li Tianlan on the same level as the 600,000 troops, which showed that he cared about Li Tianlan. "Since you are unwilling, then abandon it." Bai Qingzhao stood up, threw a cigarette to Dongqing Wudi, and said softly, "Don't forget our original intention. At that time you, me, and Uncle Zhou sought change. Our ultimate goal was to get rid of the loose alliance of the giant group. It was destined to be a process of giving up and gaining. Wudi, you have your 600,000 troops, and the Bai family and the Zhou family also have their own concerns and responsibilities. But if we can pick it up, we can put it down. When the change we want appears, we'll just take back what we put down." He patted Dongqing Wudi on the shoulder. "This is your second year. You have at least 8 years. Why can't you afford to wait? If you abandon the Border Control Corps, you will still be the executive minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State." Dongqing Wudi's body shook violently, and he didn't speak for a long time. The moon outside the window was rising. The army headquarters building was dark, and the sky was full of stars. After a long time, Dongqing Wudi picked up his mobile phone. Ning Ziyuan hadn't replied to him yet. He had left the Eastern Theater of Operations. It would take time for many things to work, at least overnight. "Get the car ready," Dongqing Wudi said in a low voice. "Go to the Hidden Dragon Sea. I want to meet the president in person." Bai Qingzhao's body relaxed quietly, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Dongqing Wudi walked out of the office, took out his mobile phone, and dialed the phone number of General Wang Wantian, the former commander of the Blood Battalion of the Border Control Corps, and the current commander of the Eastern Theater of Operations. "Marshal." The phone was quickly connected. Wang Wantian's steady voice sounded, extremely powerful. "Wantian, prepare according to plan number 2. Inform Huaining. Time is pressing. You have to hurry." Dongqing Wudi rubbed his temples, and his tone was a little tired. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone. Wang Wantian's deep voice sounded again. Marshal, have you really decided? Dongqing Wudi smiled, a little self-deprecating. Go ahead. He gave the order in a calm tone. Wang Wantian took a deep breath, said yes, and then hung up the phone. Dongqing Wudi put down his mobile phone, walked out of the army headquarters building, and looked at the starry sky above. Between family and country. In his decades, someone had told him that when the country was about to fall, how could the family survive? Someone had also told him that the bounden duty of a soldier was to protect the family and defend the country. But no one had ever told him how to choose between family and country. So the choice he made tonight was his own. The country was not broken. The family was about to fall. Chapter 355. There is a chapter called Between Families and Countries before this. It's very important. Don't miss it. If the order of the final maneuver of the two academies was adjusted to target Li Tianlan, then another change after the order adjustment made everyone smell the smell of blood. Strictly speaking, this was the only change. The order of the content of the maneuver was disrupted, but it was not too much or too little. It was not considered a change. What Kunlun City changed this time was just a number. In the first round of the final maneuver of the two academies, the predicted casualty rate of the teamwork combat was 55%. Compared with the 30% in the last session, the extra 25% was destined to be a bloody fight to the death. Allowing more than half of the casualty rate was tantamount to Kunlun City telling everyone that they could be ruthless in teamwork combat without worrying about everything. It also foreshadowed Wang Shengxiao and Gu Hanshan to be ruthless to Li Tianlan. The heavenly son of Zhongzhou State, the heir of the Li family, the first person of the young generation, in the maneuver, if they were unlucky, they might become part of the 55% casualty rate. Li Tianlan could clearly feel the gloomy smell of blood and killing intent behind the fluctuation of this index. Because of this, he asked Dongqing Rushi and Du Hanin to abstain, and chose to face everyone by himself. Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi could no longer talk about implicating each other. But there was no doubt that if she really accompanied Li Tianlan to the battlefield, Wang Shengxiao and Gu Hanshan would definitely kill her. A daughter of the Dongqing clan who had no position was worth winning over by anyone, but once she took a clear side, she would be an enemy. In the maneuver that seemed to be absolutely fair, there was no need to talk nonsense in the face of the enemy. Li Tianlan didn't think he would lose in the maneuver. But at the critical moment, it was really difficult for him to guarantee that he could take care of the people around him. Whether it was for Dongqing Rushi herself or because of his relationship with the Dongqing clan, Li Tianlan didn't want any accident to happen to Dongqing Rushi. It was late at night when he persuaded Dongqing Rushi, which was the early morning of July 23rd. That afternoon, Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi appeared in the Sky Academy. Before preparing to attend the symposium held by Gu Xingyun, Li Tianlan went to the ward of Li Beitian and others. Li Beitian, Su Chu and Ning Qiancheng. The three of them were real brothers in hardship. They lay side by side on the bed, looking gloomy. Du Hanin, Yu Qingyan, and Yi Huayu stood in the ward helplessly. The atmosphere was so oppressive that it almost froze. When Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi walked in, they just looked at him. The atmosphere became even more oppressive. What happened? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. Ning Qiancheng, who was closest to the door, glanced at him and shook his head with a bitter smile. He did not speak. Li Tianlan glanced around and fixed his eyes on Du Hanin. Du Hanin calmly waved a document in her hand. It was information about the contents of the maneuver. The symposium held by Gu Xingyun would officially begin in less than 2 hours. At noon, all the people who were eligible to be invited received this information. The corner of Li Tianlan's mouth moved, and he was about to speak. Damn, Li Beitian suddenly said. I'm participating in the team battle in the maneuver. Su Chu and Ning Qiancheng raised their eyebrows. Just when they were about to say that they would go regardless of the consequences, Li Tianlan interrupted them with a smile. It's useful for you to go with your current injury. At least you can get rid of a few cannon fodders. Then I'll drag you away and finally lose without knowing why. Is this the result you want? Li Beitian gritted his teeth. He should not have been so seriously injured in the battle with Gu Yulan. If it weren't for Gu Yunxia's sudden sneak attack, he would definitely be the real core combat force standing next to Li Tianlan today. The Great Void Sword was unsheathed. He could not defeat Gu Hanshan and Wang Shengxiao, but at least he could share a lot of pressure for Li Tianlan. No one is allowed to go, Li Tianlan said calmly. He glanced at Du Hanin and was silent for a while. Suddenly he said, "You and Rushi will abstain in the afternoon." Dongqing Rushi held Li Tianlan's hand, and there was nothing unusual on her face. Today, she was wearing a pair of black shorts, a white t-shirt, and a cute bun hairstyle. Standing beside Li Tianlan, she was quiet, like a blade of grass. Abstain? Du Hanin looked up in astonishment. Everyone's eyes were focused on Li Tianlan. Abstain. Li Tianlan nodded. "Young governor, I'm not afraid of death." Du Hanin bit her lip and said in a determined tone. She joined Sai City 3 years ago in Heaven Capital, and had been regarded as a member of Sai City for the past 3 years. During these 3 years, Du Hanin's realm had not made much progress, and she barely entered the thundershocking realm. But her mutant wind vein was becoming mature. It didn't take time at all for her to be regarded as a capable assassin in Sai City. She had the wind vein, a mutant one at that. In the whole Sai City and even the whole dark world, Tribulation, who was known as the King of Shadow and had dual wind veins, could be said to be her best teacher. Under the protection of Sai City, she blended herself perfectly into the shadow. In the darkness, she got her long-lost dignity. What about before? After her family was destroyed and before she entered Sai City, she was still sleeping with different men in the Sky Academy, just for a few pitiful credits. Du Hanin was willing to die for Sai City and the young governor of Sai City just for the small but significant changes in the past 3 years. "I don't doubt your determination," Li Tianlan said softly, "but it's meaningless. The opponent's lineup this time looks really luxurious. We don't have such a lineup, so we have to admit that we can't compete with them. It's not shameful to abstain temporarily. You'll have nothing if you die. You won't play a role here in the future. I alone am enough for the maneuver here." He paused and continued, "If you follow me, I'm afraid that I won't be able to take care of you and will be distracted." This was the reason to persuade Dongqing Rushi. It would not be a problem to persuade the people of East Emperor Palace. "I was thinking that when you came back, East Emperor Palace would make a killing in the final maneuver, and our brothers would be in the limelight." Now, Ning Qianqing laughed self-deprecatingly and bitterly. "Our future is not in the Sky Academy." Li Tianlan laughed. "This is just a starting point. The sky of our future is in the south." He looked at Ning Qianqing meaningfully. The south? Everyone was a little surprised. At this time in Zhongzhou State, most people would think that Li Tianlan would develop in the north or in Jiangxia after graduation. Situ Songyue, the governor of Sai City, used the national weapon-setting sun to seriously injure Gu Xingyun. Under the anger of the higher-ups, Sai City suffered heavy losses. Liaodong and Longjiang province had now fallen into the hands of Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai respectively. But in Guangdong, Sai City still had the final say. As the young governor of Sai City, it was natural for Li Tianlan to go to Guangdong. Jiangxia was the place where the Li family made a comeback, and the political wealth left by Wu Zhengmin was enough to make Li Tianlan go smoothly. These 2 places were the most suitable for Li Tianlan. Who could imagine that he was going to the south? The south? Li Baiqian's eyes lit up quietly. Where? Tiannan. Li Tianlan took a deep look at Li Baiqian and then at Ning Qianqing. Tiannan was outside the territory of Zhongzhou State, within the sphere of influence of Zhongzhou State, and outside the constraints of rules. It was not until this moment, facing Li Baiqian and Ning Qianqing, that Li Tianlan clearly realized what it meant for him to go to Tiannan. Many arrangements, intentionally or unintentionally, had been made a long time ago, and it was not until today that they showed their great value. In Tiannan, the current commander of the Tiannan Freedom Corps, which actually belonged to Zhongzhou State under the banner of the rebel army of Annan State, was Ning Ziyuan. He was Ning Qianqing's father. When East Emperor Palace went to Tiannan, Ning Qianqing could invisibly play the role of Li Tianlan's spokesperson in Tiannan. In Zhongzhou State, Tiannan was located in the southwest. Some things in the special warfare system of Tiannan would frequently connect with the Southwest Special Warfare Headquarters. Who was the current minister of the Southwest Special Warfare Headquarters? It was Wei Kunlun, the Nirvana Sword Master of Mount Shu. He was Li Baitian's first senior brother. If Ning Qianqing was Li Tianlan's spokesperson in Tiannan, Li Baitian was the bridge between Tiannan and the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. Between Tiannan and Zhongzhou State, the biggest force was the Blood Battalion of the Border Control Corps of Zhongzhou State. Wang Wantian, the commander of the Blood Battalion, was transferred to the Eastern Theater of Operations as the commander. But now, the core of the Dongqing clan was still the commander of the Blood Battalion. Thunder God. Dongqing Rushi's godfather. He was also the uncle who took Li Tianlan to the desert from the border. In a trance, there seemed to be a golden path in front of him. Until now, Li Tianlan vaguely had a feeling of sudden enlightenment. Ning Qianqing, Li Baitian, Dongqing Rushi, Thunder God, Ning Ziyuan. They were like chess pieces scattered on a misty chessboard. All of them were vague and had no connection with each other. But now, with the placement of Li Tianlan, the biggest chess piece, the fog dissipated and everything became clear. Li Tianlan took a deep breath. He saw the chessboard of Tiannan with all the pieces placed. He also saw in Tiannan his way to get rid of the fate of being a chess piece and become a chess player. That was where the real beginning began. It's Tiannan. Li Tianlan muttered to himself. Tiannan. An old voice rang out at the door of the ward. Zhuang Huayang, the principal of the Sky Academy, came in accompanied by Qin Ku, the deputy director of the teaching office. He looked at Li Tianlan, who looked calm, with undisguised complexity and realization in his eyes. He was also a player in the game. So like others, he saw Li Tianlan's future with a gloomy fog. But it was not until he heard Li Tianlan mention the word Tiannan that he suddenly realized what a wonderful move the hand that had pushed Li Tianlan behind the scenes had made in Tiannan. Tiannan. For Zhuang Huayang, it was like a thunder. Everything seemed so obvious. But Ning Ziyuan went to Tiannan because the Wang family of Beihai was siding with the same faction and fighting against the different faction. Thunder God of the Blood Battalion was the prelude to Dongqing Wudi's trade with the Border Control Corps after Wang Wantian left. Mount Shu became the Southwest Special Warfare Headquarters, which was expected by the public and supported by the Prince Group. All the forces acted unintentionally, but in the end, they operated a situation that was like heaven for Li Tianlan. Zhuang Huayang did not believe that it was all unintentional. He would rather believe that there was a hand behind all this that had reached into the inside of the major groups and was carefully and quietly controlling the situation. This was truly unfathomable. He just did not know who this hand, who could be called a national master, was. Was it Li Honghe? Was it the Dongqing clan? Or Qin Weibai? No matter who it was too late when the people in the game realized it. The Li family, a big dragon that had been trapped on the chessboard for more than 20 years, had been completely revived in silence. Zhuang Huayang sighed and shook his head, thinking of the call with the chief last night. Before that, he understood the chief's approach, but today, when he heard the words Tiannan, he realized that he had to remind the chief's means. Chapter 356. Li Tianlan glanced at Zhuang Huayang. His eyes were calm, so calm that there was some politeness in them. It's Tiannan, he said softly. Zhuang Huayang was speechless for a while. It was too late to say anything now. The Special Warfare Headquarters was established, Ning Ziyuan was transferred, and the Blood Legion completed the handover. Under such circumstances, Li Tianlan's trip to Tiannan was really like turning into a dragon when encountering a storm. Zhuang Huayang was convinced, and he even had some awe for the person behind the scenes. To gather the general trend of Zhongzhou State in Tiannan, such a technique was truly grand and exquisite to the extreme. When the storm in Zhongzhou State was unstable, he calmly placed a chess piece in Tiannan. It seemed a little unreasonable, but he suddenly revitalized the whole chessboard. What convinced Zhuang Huayang the most was that there was no sign of any deliberate action at all. Naturally, Several major forces operated at the same time, and they had inadvertently created such a situation that no one had expected. After the Yuzhou conference, the Li family made a comeback. Everyone's eyes were focused on the northeast and southeast. Some people were guarding against the Li family, and some were counting their gains. The situation in Tiannan was obvious, but because everything seemed so natural, no one had realized it yet. The easiest to overlook was often the most obvious. For example, the sunlight during the day. For example, the starry night sky. Zhuang Huayang didn't know how much preparation the person behind the scenes had made for such a wonderful technique. But if this person hadn't been clear about the situation in Zhongzhou State, there would have been no such effect as today's thunder and silence. When did all of this start? Zhuang Huayang pondered silently. The general trend of Tiannan and the changes of several sensitive positions were the result of the internal operations of the Wang family of Beihai, the Prince Group and the Giant Group. The Yuzhou Conference, Linen and the Northeast had indeed attracted everyone's attention. Thus, for the time being, no one had noticed Tiannan. This didn't seem hard to understand, but it was also hard to understand. After all, Li Tianlan was here. He was a rare martial arts genius in Zhongzhou State for decades. Li Tianlan could be said to be the most central figure in all these changes. How could he be ignored? To anyone, ignoring such a martial arts genius. Ignore? Ignore. Zhuang Huayang's brain suddenly became a little sluggish. He looked at Li Tianlan's calm face. While thinking, Zhuang Huayang's back was covered in cold sweat. Ignore Li Tianlan? No one would be so stupid. Even if there were in the past, there wouldn't be a second time after their return. Zhuang Huayang had never ignored Li Tianlan. He was a martial arts prodigy, but it was not until this moment that he suddenly realized that Li Tianlan was only a martial arts genius in his mind. That was the only impression he had. Li Tianlan had done a lot, but he seemed to have done nothing. With his strength and status, there was nothing he could do now. In the final battle of Heaven Capital, he was a pawn of Zhongzhou State. In the process of the Li family returning to the peak, he was like a pawn of the Li family. He was so pure, so clear-headed, and had always been silently improving his strength. He really didn't consider anything, or at least he didn't show it. Why did the Li family suddenly collapse back then? Did the Wang family of Beihai do something secretly? What resources did Kunlun City use in the plan back then? Would these resources be clues? What was the truth behind Li Guangtu's treason? From the beginning to the end, Li Tianlan didn't even care about this series of questions that he had to consider in his position. He knew nothing about the past and didn't explore it. Instead, he focused purely on improving his strength, waiting for the opportunity to take the first step. He was too obvious. So much so that it even became his label in people's eyes. Zhuang Huayang finally knew why the powerful Wang family of Beihai and the delicate Kunlun City ignored Tiannan. Their eyes were indeed on the northeast and Jiangxia, but also on Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan showed that he just wanted to improve his strength. And what they paid attention to was Li Tianlan himself. So that in the end, Tiannan, such a huge omission was formed. Zhuang Huayang's heart was a little cold. He didn't know whether Li Tianlan did all this intentionally or unintentionally. If the answer was intentional, he was willing to use himself as a chess piece and use the purest way to attract everyone's attention. How scheming was he to be so dormant? The corners of Zhuang Huayang's mouth kept trembling. At this moment he wanted to say a lot, but he didn't know why he couldn't say anything. It's almost time. Li Tianlan looked down at his watch. It was 2:20 in the afternoon. Gu Xingyun's symposium was held at 3 o'clock in the conference room of the Sky Academy, about 15 minutes away from here. He nodded to Zhuang Huayang, then looked at Dongqing Rushi and Du Hanin, and said calmly, "Let's go." Tianlan. Zhuang Huayang took a deep breath and suddenly shouted. Li Tianlan turned to look at him. "What's your plan?" When he asked this, Zhuang Huayang's tone was a little bitter. The final maneuver of the two academies was a grand event of the special warfare system of Zhongzhou State. Kunlun City had the greatest dominance. But as the current ruling group of Zhongzhou State, if the academics insisted on standing as an ally, even if it couldn't change the order of the maneuver, it could at least fight for more living space for Li Tianlan. and let him see the sincerity of the academics. But the chief didn't do so. Instead, he chose silence and acquiescence. Li Tianlan was still an ally of the academics. But this subtle change began after Li Tianlan established a closer relationship with the giant group. The academics hoped that Li Tianlan had something to do with the giant group, but they didn't want their relationship to be too close. Li Tianlan, who largely depended on the academics to survive, was far more in line with the interests of the academics than Li Tianlan, who was at ease in the two groups. But Zhou Yuanshan's trip to Jiangxia was tantamount to the giant group clearly announcing to the outside world that they would create their core team with Li Tianlan as the core for the next few decades. The academics could only take this opportunity to pressure Li Tianlan and the giant group. In such a state, Li Tianlan was an ally of the academics, but he was more like a pawn used by the academics to ask for benefits from the giant group. The most important thing was that Li Tianlan was willing to be a pawn of the Li family, but he might not be willing to be a pawn of the academics. Now the situation in Tiannan was gradually clear, and Li Tianlan's future was predictable. He was the strongest ally in the future, but in the next final maneuver, he would face an extremely embarrassing situation. Zhuang Huayang really wanted to know what Li Tianlan's plan was. Rushi and Hanin will abstain. Li Tianlan said calmly, I will participate in the final maneuver myself and participate in their so-called team battle. By yourself. Zhuang Huayang's face changed dramatically. I won't lose. Li Tianlan said blandly. Zhuang Huayang smiled bitterly again. The academics had made their own moves. The key was whether Dongqing Wudi was willing to break the rules for Li Tianlan. If Dongqing Rushi did not abstain, Dongqing Wudi was undoubtedly more likely to take action for his daughter. But if Dongqing Rushi abstained, on one side was the responsibility of the Border Control Corps, and on the other side was the weight of Li Tianlan. How would Dongqing Wudi choose? If he chose to give up, this maneuver would be a dead end for Li Tianlan. If he lost, Li Tianlan would die. If he won, Li Tianlan would still die. Li Tianlan could win with such a lineup. Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai would definitely kill this threat at all costs. This might be an opportunity for the academics? But if the giant group gave up, would the big shots of the academics really offend the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City for Li Tianlan? Who was willing to bear that kind of pressure? Zhuang Huayang had a splitting headache. He took a deep breath, patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder, and said in a deep voice, I'll call the leading cadre right away. Li Tianlan smiled, turned, and walked out of the ward. The conference room of the Sky Academy was very large. The environment was pale white, simple and spacious. When Li Tianlan walked into the conference room with Dongqing Rushi and Du Hanin 15 minutes in advance, Gu Xingyan was already sitting in the main seat of the conference room. Gu Qianchuan, who used to serve as a real marshal in Zhongzhou State, and now became a nominal title with the disbandment of the Snowdance Corps, stood quietly beside Gu Xingyan with an indifferent expression. The fresh sunshine after the rain gently sprinkled into the main seat of the conference room. The two invincible realm experts of Zhongzhou State stood and bathed in the sunshine, as if they were wearing a layer of golden clothes. There were already many figures in the conference room. Gu Xingyan's symposium was held by the top young people in the two academies. To be exact, they were high-level people who had a clear team and served as the core figures in their respective teams, or the individual immortals with great personal strength. Li Tianlan had read the information. This time, there were about 30 forces in the two academies, and the total number of people was about 750. Under normal circumstances, this should be the total number of people in the team cooperation maneuver. There were lunatics who participated in the team maneuver to save their lives, but there were not many in previous years. In the final maneuver, where the casualty rate was at least 30%, an individual facing a team was tantamount to courting death, or it was tantamount to giving credits to others. According to the rules of the two academies, the final maneuver of the two academies was important, but credits were more important. Therefore, the maneuver seemed to be a contest of force, but the tricks in it also tested a person's mind. Every student would consider how to make use of their strengths to make up for their weaknesses, and strive for the most credits to improve their ranking. As soon as Li Tianlan and the other two walked into the conference room, almost everyone's eyes were focused on them. Most people's eyes were a little strange. Wang Shengxiao and Song Xiai sat in the middle. Seeing Li Tianlan come in, Wang Shengxiao waved his hand with a smile as a greeting, looking very friendly. Gu Hanshan, the young master of Kunlun City, and Gu Yulan, the last disciple of Gu Qianchuan, sat together. They were almost next to Wang Shengxiao and Song Xiai. Gu Yulan, whose face was still a little pale, was still wearing a mask. She snuggled up to Gu Hanshan like a little bird. Jiang Shangyu sat on the other side of Gu Hanshan. Before Li Tianlan came in, several super experts of the young generation of Zhongzhou State had been whispering together. What they said did not matter at all. What mattered was that the signal they gave was clear enough, and that was enough. Li Tianlan was expressionless. He picked a chair at random and sat down, quietly waiting for the meeting to begin. Time passed slowly. At 3 o'clock sharp, the bell rang in the office. Gu Xingyun, who had been sitting in the main seat with his eyes closed, opened his eyes. He glanced around, and a smile bloomed on his elegant face. Everyone is here. Gu Xingyun said, "Let's have a meeting." Li Tianlan froze and subconsciously narrowed his eyes. Everyone is here? Sitting next to him, Du Hanin and Dongqing Rushi were celebrities of the two academies respectively. Before the meeting began, they had introduced the main figures present to Li Tianlan. The conference room was large and there were many people sitting, but it was far from complete. There were about 30 forces of the two academies that had not been disbanded after 3 years. But Du Hanin and Dongqing Rushi introduced too few. 5 from the Sky Academy, 7 from the Deep Sea Academy. This also included East Emperor Palace, 3000 World, Phantom Palace, and Jilei Mountain. That was to say, half of the young forces of the two academies were not present at this time. But Gu Xingyun said that everyone was here. Li Tianlan did not think that Gu Xingyun would make mistakes in this kind of thing. Then it could only prove one thing. In this team maneuver, more than half of the forces in the two academies chose to abstain for various reasons. Abstaining was allowed in the maneuver of the two academies. But abstaining was not without a price. Some credits would be deducted. So abstaining was not so easy to determine. But even so, more than half of the forces chose to abstain. What did this mean? Li Tianlan observed everyone in the conference room calmly. Of the 12 forces present at this time, in addition to East Emperor Palace, Phantom Palace, 3000 World, and Jilei Mountain, there were 8 other forces. There was no doubt that these were the forces led by Wang Shengxiao and Gu Hanshan. The rules set by Kunlun City seemed to be ordinary except for increasing the casualty rate. But in fact the team maneuver, which used to be placed in the middle or at the end, had become the simplest and most brutal encirclement and suppression with the adjustment of the order. Li Tianlan was the target of everyone's encirclement and suppression. It could even be said that he was the only target. Kunlun City and the Wang family of Beihai made it clear that they wanted to give Li Tianlan a little chance. Li Tianlan looked at Gu Xingyun and Gu Qianchuan. Gu Xingyun did not look at him. But Gu Qianchuan's eyes were always on Li Tianlan. His eyes were ferocious and vicious, with awe-inspiring killing intent. Seeing Li Tianlan's gaze, Gu Qianchuan raised the corner of his mouth and showed a disdainful sneer. Li Tianlan lowered his head again and remained calm. Gu Xingyun smiled again. His injury was indeed very serious, and his breath was short and heavy. Even if he tried to hide it, he could not hide it perfectly. Li Tianlan glanced at him and lowered his head again. Some teams finally applied to give up this team maneuver for various reasons. I personally agreed with their abstention. So the team combat on the first day of the maneuver is probably everyone here in your team. Gu Xingyun took a deep breath and continued, "This year's team maneuver is special." After careful consideration, Kunlun City decided to increase the casualty rate of this maneuver. But correspondingly, the credits obtained will also increase accordingly. The casualty rate will increase by 20%, and the credits will be increased by 50% according to the previous standard. Such a result is destined to make the competition between you very fierce. I'll ask you again formally. Is there anyone here who wants to withdraw from the maneuver? There was silence. In the silence, a clear voice sounded. I abstain. Huh? What? There was an uproar. Everyone turned to look at Dongqing Rushi, their eyes full of incredible emotions. Dongqing Rushi, Li Tianlan's fiancé, abstained. Did Li Tianlan fall out with the giant group? Gu Xingyan was also stunned, and he didn't even hide the surprise in his eyes. Dongqing Rushi's withdrawal meant that the giant group was less likely to intervene in this maneuver. He had no reason not to be surprised. Dongqing, are you sure? Gu Xingyan asked, trying to make his voice soft. Dongqing Rushi glanced at Gu Xingyan, nodded, stood up, and walked out directly. It seemed that she came here to announce the news. I abstain. Du Hanin also stood up and followed Dongqing Rushi out of the conference room. Everyone's brains were buzzing, and they couldn't fully understand what was going on for a while. Diagonally across from Li Tianlan, Wang Shengxiao narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Song Xiai. Song Xiai didn't look at Wang Shengxiao, just lowered her head. Wang Shengxiao's eyes were still gentle, but the light gradually became stern. In an absolute disadvantage, Li Tianlan didn't want to implicate his woman, so he sent Dongqing Rushi out of the maneuver. Wang Shengxiao had an absolute advantage. Why would he let his woman take the risk? He looked at Song Xiai without blinking. Thus, while everyone was still in a state of shock, another unexpected voice rang out. I abstain. Song Xiai gritted her teeth, and her voice was a little helpless. She glared at Wang Shengxiao. Wang Shengxiao smiled and touched Song Xi's hair. This was a man's war. Li Tianlan didn't want his woman to take the risk. As the heir of the Wang family of Beihai, he naturally had no reason to lose to Li Tianlan in this kind of courage. Everyone's eyes began to shift and finally fell on Gu Hanshan. This team maneuver was destined to be a life-and-death fight. Both Li Tianlan and Wang Shengxiao sent their women out of the maneuver to give them safety. What about Gu Hanshan? The muscles on Gu Hanshan's face twitched fiercely. He was expressionless and said nothing. Gu Yulan meant Gu Hanshan, so she also said nothing. In the silence, Li Tianlan and Wang Shengxiao's eyes seemed to meet for a moment, intentionally or unintentionally. Both of them saw a trace of mockery in each other's eyes. Anyone else wants to quit? Gu Xingyan asked. No one spoke. This time, everyone chose to stay. Gu Xingyan looked at Gu Hanshan, and an obscure light flashed in his eyes. His tone was still calm. Very well, since you accept the maneuver, I will introduce the rules. I will tell you the specific tasks of the maneuver the day before the maneuver. Everyone, although your competition is very fierce, I still hope that if possible, you will try to be merciful to your opponents, because they are not enemies. This is just a maneuver. From his standpoint, this was what he had to say for the sake of the situation. The sake of the situation was nonsense. It also included the so-called rules that Gu Xingyan explained. In fact, today Gu Hanshan and Wang Shengxiao sat together, which was the most important practical content. The actual content didn't need to be said. It was already here. This was to put pressure on Li Tianlan. And it was also to strengthen the confidence of other young forces that followed the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City. This was the real meaning. Li Tianlan quietly listened to Gu Xingyan's nonsense. He felt a little bored. The nonsense was unexpectedly long. The meeting started at 3 o'clock, and Gu Xingyan talked until 4:30. No one had a problem with such maneuver rules. So Gu Xingyan announced the end of the meeting. The young elites who participated in the meeting left one after another. Before leaving, everyone glanced at Li Tianlan with meaningful eyes. Li Tianlan sat in his seat alone. He was truly a loner. He was surrounded by bone-chilling hostility from all directions. He suddenly smiled and glanced at Gu Xingyan again. Then he got up and was about to leave. Stop! A voice suddenly sounded behind him, calm and confident, almost like an order. Li Tianlan calmly turned around. What's the matter? He asked, narrowing his eyes. Gu Hanshan, who had never communicated with Li Tianlan, walked to Li Tianlan. He looked at Li Tianlan's eyes carefully. The two looked at each other. What do you think is more important, survival or glory? Gu Hanshan suddenly said. If it were you, which one do you value most? No one could think that Gu Hanshan's first sentence was to ask such a profound and simple question. Li Tianlan remained calm. He could feel that the eyes of the two invincible realm experts of Kunlun City were focused on him at this time. He suddenly smiled and said calmly, "The most important thing is the enemy. I think the master and the servant are the most important." There was a faint but extremely dangerous smile on Gu Hanshan's face. His face was ordinary, but at this time, it had an indescribable strength. "I'm willing to give you a chance. You be my dog, and I can give you the right to survive and the opportunity to gnaw on bones. How about that?" Gu Hanshan's tone was very generous and generous. "Don't be ungrateful," he whispered unhurriedly. "If you want to live, this is your last chance. If you don't want the face I'm giving you, I promise you will regret it." Only those who knew the past of the Li family and Kunlun City understood what Gu Hanshan meant. The Gu family had a long history, but more than 20 years ago, there was no special warfare group in Zhongzhou State. At that time, there were only 5 groups in Zhongzhou State. At that time, the Gu family was regarded by many as a running dog at the feet of the Li family, or a running dog of the Southeast group, which could not be shown in public. Gu Hanshan was undoubtedly proud. He didn't want to admit the dark history of the Gu family, but he wanted the heir of the Li family to crawl at his feet and be his dog. Wang Shengxiao heard this sentence. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. He wanted to say something, but he forced himself to hold back. Let Li Tianlan be a dog? Perhaps in the whole dark world, only Gu Hanshan had this courage. Perhaps even Gu Xingyin didn't have this idea. Wang Shengxiao knew very well that even his father, Wang Tianzong, had tried to rope in Li Tianlan. As long as Li Tianlan agreed to join the Wang family of Beihai, in the future, Li Tianlan's weight in the territory of the Wang family of Beihai was no less than that of him, the heir of the Wang family of Beihai. This was not only sincerity, but also respect for Li Tianlan's potential. But now, Gu Hanshan asked Li Tianlan to be his dog. Such courage was really cute. Li Tianlan's expression did not change. He looked at Gu Hanshan and directly said what Wang Shengxiao wanted to say. "Are you an idiot?" He looked at Gu Hanshan and asked very seriously. "What did you say?" Gu Hanshan's face was cold. "I said you're an idiot." Li Tianlan chuckled. "Is the young master of Kunlun City that great? Do you really think you're a big shot? You're courting death by offending me like this." Gu Hanshan laughed gloomily, and his eyes were cold. "I really don't think you're a big shot," Li Tianlan said blandly. "In a dangerous situation, I will keep my woman away from danger, and Wang Shengxiao will also keep his woman away from danger. What about you?" He looked at Gu Yulan and said mockingly, "In a dangerous situation, in your eyes, your woman may just be a character who can create traps for the enemy. She hasn't recovered yet, right? Based on this alone, you're far inferior to me and Wang Shengxiao. When we climb the martial arts, we cultivate the sword energy and condense the sword intent. We're born as human beings with no breadth of mind and bearing. So what if you have 10 heavenly king hearts? You're just a useless person." Gu Hanshan's face did not change at all, but his tone became colder. Very good, very good." Li Tianlan smiled. What he said was actually the truth. When he entered the secular world 3 years ago, he valued Gu Hanshan, who had the heavenly king heart, because the other party's realm was much higher than his. But in terms of martial arts, he really didn't think much of the heir of Kunlun City. The Gu family used to be a low-key dog. After overthrowing the Li family, it became the war god clan of Zhongzhou State. Its rise and fall of honor and disgrace were straight up and down. In terms of foundation, it was a real upstart. Gu Hanshan's status was very high, but he didn't want to forget the shame of being a dog of the Li family, at least not far enough for him to forget. In such a state, he had the heavenly king heart, but there must be something wrong with his state of mind. In Li Tianlan's eyes, if he had to count his future opponents among the young generation of Zhongzhou State, even Jiang Shangyu ranked ahead of Gu Hanshan, not to mention Wang Shengxiao. It's not a good thing for young people to be arrogant. Gu Xingyun's voice suddenly sounded. He walked over slowly and looked at Li Tianlan with a faint smile. "Tianlan, no one will doubt your potential. But potential is not equal to combat capability. I've seen many geniuses with amazing potential but died young. Li Tianlan said calmly. Your Highness is experienced and knowledgeable. No wonder you can cultivate such an excellent air. I admire you. Gu Xingyan was not angry at all. His smile became more elegant and warm. Hans Han is young and has many shortcomings, but it doesn't matter. But he's right about one thing. It's really important to know how to adapt to circumstances and appreciate favors. In this respect, you're not good enough. Do I have to be a dog for him if I do well? Li Tianlan laughed. He suddenly thought of something. I heard that a strong man once killed an invincible realm expert of Kunlun City for a dog. I don't know if it's true. Gu Xingyun's smile slowly faded. He looked at Li Tianlan and said expressionlessly, Tianlan, are you humiliating Kunlun City? I don't dare. Li Tianlan laughed. I just asked casually. I don't need you to remind me of anything in a strange way. Gu Xingyun said indifferently. The Gu family did live under someone else's roof, but it was just a necessary forbearance. The final winner was us. As for the Li family, no matter how glorious it was destroyed. He took a step closer to Li Tianlan and chuckled, but his voice was extremely cold. I can tell you clearly. As long as I'm alive, the Li family can't rise again. You don't want to be a dog? Very well, then be a nonentity for a lifetime. He paused, his voice getting lower and lower, and he chuckled. How is the old dog Li Honghe now? If Situd Sungyue hadn't stopped me, your grandfather would have died long ago. Ha, but it doesn't matter. Last time I let him fall from the invincible realm, which is equivalent to knocking out his dog teeth. When I recover, I'll go to Lin and again and break his dog legs. It's not difficult to kill him. Li Tianlan looked at Gu Xingyan quietly. There was no anger, no panic. There was only pure emotion in his eyes. I won't let it go. He suddenly laughed. In front of Gu Xingyun, he bent down and took off his shoes and socks. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.